Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm going to continue the story What If Kid Naruto Was Trained by Future Naruto Part 4. If you enjoy this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
What the hell is up with this guy? Omoi frowned at the bleeding mess before him. Why isn't he going down? Samui was hanging back as Karui and Omoi's combination techniques proved enough to deal with the weird gray-haired man in front of them. Yugito Taiko, it seems he is invulnerable to Kenjutsu? I'm afraid it's not just Kenjutsu. Yugito murmured with a serious expression across her face. I've put him under my strongest genjutsu, strong enough to knock even a seasoned Junin out. She glanced to the side to see his partner, Kakuzu, if she'd heard correctly, still motionless. That wasted genjutsu took a big chunk out of my reserves, too. These two are trouble. She coughed once to think things through. Samui, you should find an opening and get away. Get reinforcements here. Samui, calm as ever, regarded her. What about? That won't happen. Yugito cut her off. His partner is actually expecting me to summon or use signal birds. She just knew Kakuzu was grinning behind his mask. As soon as things get rougher and that masked one joins in, you get away, she told her blonde subordinate. I'll go. Jinchuriki. Who? Hidan. Stop fucking around, Kakuzu barked as he overheard Yugito and Samui's conversation. Fuck you, Kakuzu. These two cowards sliced my entire body up. I'd like to see you try and move after that slicing shit, Hidan yelled out, pointing at Kakuzu in dramatic fashion, before turning back to his two opponents. You two are getting it now. Karui gripped her sword tighter. Omoi, we've unleashed everything we have on him. Omoi nodded his head. Electricity doesn't faze this guy either. I guess we'll just have to try that. Karui gave Omoi a short glance, careful not to let Hidan out of her sight. Yeah. Let's cut him up. Hidan chuckled and changed from holding the scythe in his hand by its handle to holding it by the chain attached to it. Come, weaklings. As Karui and Omoi nodded to each other and got ready to rush at him, Kakuzu yawned shortly. This should be interesting. Yugito took that as a warning and immediately prepared herself to jump in and save Omoi and Karui should anything go wrong, and Samui was already inching closer. As soon as Omoi and Karui vanished from Hidan's view, the grayhead yelled out, Kadu Kirikata, while Karui and Omoi both performed Zatai Konguki. Unfortunately for Omoi and Karui, Hidan was swinging his scythe around him, creating an absolute defense. Omoi and Karui got away with a few scratches and landed in front of Samui and Yugito. You two okay? Yugito asked as she looked them over. Just a nick, Taiko, Omoi uttered irritated. Karui gritted her teeth. How can he still move so fast? He should be on the ground, completely dead. Kakuzu still wasn't doing much of anything when Hidan suddenly started cackling madly. You guys are so screwed, he managed to let out between his insane laughter. What the hell is that? Karui tilted her head in confusion at the weird red triangle Hidan was standing in. And how come he's changed skin color? He looks like a damn skeleton. He just created the triangle. Samui answered coolly. After licking his scythe, he instantly changed into this form and then started drawing the triangle with his feet, with his own blood. I see. So he is getting weirder, after all. Karui gave Hidan a dubious look. Samui. Yeah, I'll join the combo this time. The blonde replied. Close in and I'll follow up. Omoi and Karui both rushed forward again, this time closely followed by Samui. But Samui's eyes widened as Hidan stabbed himself in the leg with a short black sword he plucked from inside his cloak, screaming in pain and delight. Samui stopped rushing after Karui and Omoi as they both fell to the ground screaming in pain. What happened? She landed between Karui and Omoi and noticed they were both bleeding profusely from their right leg. She narrowed her eyes at Hidan, who had stabbed himself in the right leg. You wound yourself, you wound them? A body link technique? Jashin has deemed you unworthy. Hidan was chuckling at the sky. A curse has fallen upon you and now only death awaits. Wahahaha. Samui wanted to move forward, but Hidan stopped her, while his face was still aimed at the sky. He seemed to be glancing down at her like this in mad fashion. Make one move and the next stab is through the head, Blondie. That goes for you too, Jinchuriki. Seems it's over. Hidan, kill them. Kakuzu said as he slowly started walking towards Yugito. I'll take her out. You're not the boss, Kakuzu, I want to play a bit more. With that, Hidan sliced his short sword across his chest, not too deeply. Wahahaha. He enjoyed the painful screams Karui and Omoi let out. His laughter died abruptly, though, as someone kicked him hard out of the triangle he was standing in. Akatsuki. The new arrival let out through clenched teeth. While Naruto checked to see if everyone was still alright, Kakuzu instantly observed him thoroughly. He actually seemed interested in the new arrival. I didn't sense this kid, and he knows who we are. He seems prepared. Hey, you fucker. I was in the middle of something. You bet? He got cut off as Naruto appeared beside him and kicked him straight through a tree and then some. He's fast. Kakuzu also noticed how Hidan was still flying through the air, away from them. And he's got serious power in his blows. You two okay? Naruto asked as he approached the struggling Omoi and Karui. They were in a lot of pain, so he turned to Samui, while also creating 2 shadow clones. My clones will carry Omoi and Karui. Get away from here. Back to Kumogakure. I'll clean up. I'll stay back, too. They seem to be after me. Yugito appeared beside Naruto. You're pretty good. Kakuzu had his arms folded, staring at the trio before him. We only need that girl beside you, kid. We'll let the rest of you go. You don't want to be killed here. Actually, you're after me too. Naruto glared hard at Kakuzu. Kakuzu perked up a bit. What, so you're a Jinchuriki too? Those others don't have any worth and you two are just targets. This day isn't as lucrative as I hoped it'd be. I'll change the offer, then. Both of you come quietly and I won't kill anyone. Yugito-san, please leave this to me. I'll kill this guy and the other one, was how Naruto responded to Kakuzu's generous offer. Naruto-san. Naruto didn't turn around, but Samui knew she had his attention as he had slightly turned his ear to her. The other one can defeat you if he gets a hold of your blood. Before Naruto could reply, the still present Akatsuki member spoke up. You pissed me off. Kakuzu was looking at the ground. He didn't like being ignored. I've decided. Naruto and Yugito readied themselves while Samui started following after Naruto's Kage Bunshin carrying the other 2 Kumo Chunin. With a scream, Kakuzu erupted into a bigger figure. Without any warning, a wind blast, a fire blast and a lightning blast erupted straight where Naruto and Yugito stood. They both got away and landed further away. 3 elements at once. Yugito let out, impressed. Naruto nodded his head. Yeah, somehow I think that's not all he can do. I'll take him out right now. Yugito's eyes widened as chakra exploded around Naruto. As her vision returned to her and the smoke from Kakuzu's attack started clearing, she watched Naruto's chakra form. What the hell is that? The Konoha nin shook his head once. Not now. Yugito let her jaw drop a bit as Naruto vanished into thin air, appearing behind Kakuzu with several chakra arms and chakra orbs. Rasenrangan. The great form Kakuzu was now crashed hard into the ground, being hit by several Rasengan. As Naruto landed on the ground, he was shocked to see Kakuzu completely unharmed. Shit, am I still not strong enough? An attack like that won't harm me, brat. Kakuzu, while being surrounded by black threads, seemed to be shining a metallic blue-gray. Raiden. Kazanrai. Kakuzu snarled at the small thunderstorm Yugito sent his way, but he easily avoided it and in turn released a wind blast her way. His attacks are all so high-leveled. Yugito thought as she quickly dashed backwards, where trees would shield her. Kakuzu's attack went straight through about 20 trees before it impacted on the ground, still sending Yugito flying harshly. I'll deal with you first. Kakuzu was deadly serious as he turned to Naruto. I just know you're going to be a hassle. Before Naruto could blink, his entire world turned black. Gokabuto Maruyan, came Kakuzu's voice all around him. All of Kakuzu's threads were formed into a gigantic dome entrapping Naruto. But the blonde wasn't too worried as he looked around. Flashes of white seemed to be flashing on the walls and on the ceiling of the dome. Fuuten. Atsugai. The blonde leaf ninja just managed to spot that the wind blast came from a white mask to his left. He had plenty of time to activate the Kaiyufu absorption seal on his outfit, though. An attack like that won't harm me, old man. He echoed the previously spoken words right back to Kakuzu. Interesting, you seem to have a defense against Fuuten? How about this? Kaiten, Zakoku. Unfortunately, to switch between element absorption seals, an interval of 5 seconds existed. Naruto swore as he quickly appeared near a wall of black threads, having dodged the massive fire attack. But the moment he came close to the wall attacked him. Threads he can control, so he can close this dome just like that. He's toying with me? Naruto quickly jumped into the smoke Kakuzu's previous attack created and performed Hiraishin to get out of the dome. He had already planted a few Hiraishin seals around the clearing they were fighting in. From a distance, Naruto performed a few intricate hand seals. Yuken, Shounetsu Jigoku. With red chakra blazing wildly around him, Naruto's chakra cloak expanded wildly until Naruto seemed to throw the cloak off of him, towards Kakuzu's dome. The chakra cloak previously surrounding Naruto continued to expand as it approached the dome. It completely enveloped the dome, which was 3 times the size of the Hokage Tower, and made it burn red and purple. As the dome was slowly falling apart, a single figure struggled to move forward in the midst of it all, glaring at Naruto. You managed to kill 3 of my 5, he fell to one knee. You'll pay for this. Naruto had already reverted back to his normal form as soon as he released the Yuken technique and he couldn't call it forth any longer. Shit, that attack took almost everything out of me, and he still isn't down. His eyes widened as Kakuzu started rising up again. Desperately gathering chakra again, Naruto performed another set of hand seals. Fuuten, Ren. Not this time, you fucking brat. Naruto's eyes were widened greatly as Hidan's scythe was penetrating the entire right side of his chest, piercing through his ribcage and puncturing his lungs. You're dead. He flung Naruto away and shot Kakuzu an unimpressed glance. You had trouble with that weakling, Kakuzu? Naruto. Hidan turned to see a red-haired boy standing by the bleeding mess that was Naruto. Kakuzu was now walking up to Hidan and staring at the scene as well. That kid you just cut down is also a Jinchuriki. It seems I exhausted his chakra reserves. So you cut him down? Gaara's glare screamed for blood as he focused all his killing intent on Hidan. Damn right I did. Ya loser. Are you his friend or something? Want to avenge him? Hidan laughed louder and louder, while Kakuzu sighed. Come here and get killed too, weakling. The Jashin follower taunted. Before Hidan could continue, the ground all around him exploded and surrounded him. Kakuzu was quick enough to jump away from the sudden attack. Sand? Kakuzu thought as he narrowed his eyes at the newcomer. Related to the Sandaime or Yondaime case cage, perhaps? Unsurprisingly, Hidan used his scythe to cut his way out of the dome of sand Gaara had created. He's strong, not even a food and ninjutsu would grant such easy escape. Gaara wanted to press further, but Naruto's voice stopped him. Gu Gaara, don't. Gaara didn't look away from Hidan and Kakuzu as Naruto started speaking. Get out of here, they're both too strong. We're not the only ones anymore, Naruto. It wasn't Gaara's voice, but Yugito's who spoke up next. It seems she had just arrived with the company of one team from Konoha, Naruto's remaining subordinates. Hey, yo, oh yeah, baby, Kurabi's at the scene, ready to intervene. Kurabi had landed in front of Naruto's team. You better run from here, or you're going to disappear. The 8-tailed Jinchuriki. Kakuzu informed his partner. A few leaf chunin and another fresh Jinchuriki. The masked Kakuzu seemed to ponder about. The battle before has left him without the Akatsuki cloak. We're retreating, Hidan. What? Why? Are you tired, you coward? Hidan yelled obscenities one after another. Quiet down, you infuriating mosquito. Kakuzu silenced his ranting. Or I'll kill you. You can try, fucker. Hidan brought his scythe down on Kakuzu's face, but Kakuzu beat him to the punch and sent the Jashin follower into the dirt. We're leaving. I would have stayed if any of these fools had strong hearts, but they don't. I'm not risking my own for some malfunctioning or weak ones. Before Hidan could speak up, Kakuzu had one hardened thread around his neck. Try me, Hidan. I'll cut off your head. Hidan merely grumbled, recognizing his superior. Fine, ya loser. We'll leave them to die for another day. The group watched the two Akatsuki members shunshin away, before they all turned to the horribly wounded Naruto. To Kumo, as fast as we can. Timeskip. 2 months' disdain was all he felt for the village he was walking through now. His team was accompanied by 2 Junin simply because he was a Hyuga and he imagined there would be more for Hinata, who was from the main branch. He wondered, if he was the one protecting Hinata, would he really protect her here in Kumo? But then, knowing Kumo, they would kill him, anyway. No, in here, he had to be on guard at all times. Don't worry, Neji. The green beast shall protect you. Neji resisted the urge to bristle at his sensei and chose to glare at the other Junin with them. One Shiranui Genma. The Senbon chewing man had spoken little on the way to Kumo, even to Guy. Guy sensei. I can see a shinobi in Kumo uniform. Not able to fight it, Neji rolled his eyes at his clueless teammate. He wanted to comment on his ridiculousness, but Ten beat him to the punch. Of course. Lee, we're already in the village, you idiot. Guy hadn't heard apparently. Excellent observation, my student. We must be in Kumogakure. Right then and there, Neji really wanted to turn back and head for Konoha. He grumbled inwardly as Guy and Genma suddenly stopped walking in front of him. He shot a casual glance ahead to see why they stopped only to see a familiar face. He didn't remember the girl's name, but he knew she was a former Suna Nin, now turned Leaf. He recalled she wore her hair in 4 pigtails, but now she wore it in loose, with one tail sticking out on the right side of her head. Bangs weren't covering her eyes thanks to the Konoha Hite aid on her forehead. You're early. The girl started. I'm Sabaku no Tamari. I'll be helping you get familiar with Kumo, though I still don't know most of it. I do know where the Konoha teams are staying, so, which team are you? Young blossoming girl. My name is Maeda Guy, he yelled out loud, bowing deeply. His student, seeing this, didn't want to be outdone. Hua, Yash, I am Rock. Lee, strangely enough, he bowed even deeper, with his forehead almost touching the ground. Tamari stared dumbfounded at the duo as they, whilst bowing, yelled each other's name at each other. Genma stepped forward and offered her a hand. Shiranui Genma, and you can ignore these 2. Tamari took his hand and expected the remaining 2 to introduce themselves. Hyuga Neji. Ten. Your brother defeated me during the previous Chunin exams. The girl actually glared at her. Tamari noticed amusedly. My brother is crazy strong, don't let it get to you. And then she noticed Genma was still holding her hand. You can let go now, she deadpanned. The Junin grinned, but let go. You're still a genin, right? Why are you leading us around here? I was ordered to. The blonde girl shrugged. Am I to assume the others will also be arriving earlier than expected? Your team is 2 days early? Genma shook his head. No, you shouldn't. These 2 are insane when it comes to traveling. He explained, pointing to the still bowing duo crying out each other's name. As Tamari started walking, it took about 3 more minutes before Guy and Lee finally followed. Maeda Guy, Shiranui Genma, Hyuga Neji, Rock Lee and Ten. We don't know that Genma Guy, right? Why are you asking me? This time we can just observe the Chunin exams, it's our given mission anyway. 3 Fuin Bunshin were walking around Team Guy, idly talking to each other as they couldn't be heard by the others anyway. Only the Hyuga might be able to see them as clouds of chakra should he activate his dujutsu, but he wouldn't be any wiser about it. I wonder if our old team is participating. Gnome Kakashi? I think you don't have to worry about that. The sounds of someone panting filled the clearing. Craters, blown down trees and crushed boulders were all the results of a vicious battle just moments prior. Man, you've gotten good. Naruto was in and exhaling loudly, obviously tired. He was supporting his upper frame with his hands on his knees, while contemplating what to do next. His opponent was doing far less well lying on the ground, not even able to stand up anymore. UGHJ. He wanted to speak, but a very dry cough interrupted. Not good enough. Naruto decided not to mention the fact he had used Gogyo Fuin on himself before the battle, to make things more challenging. You never told me, he started in between the panting. Your other hand has a technique hidden as well. The same as your previous teammate, right? Dosu wanted to sit up but found out the hard way, a massive cramp in his neck, that he couldn't. He held in a yelp of pain, though. Not really much of a teammate. His name was Zaku and he was a fool. The former sound nin couldn't do anything but look up at the sky. He was just that tired. We should get moving. The blonde let out a breath of slight annoyance. He never did like stopping a spar or training. Let's go, Dosu. He didn't know Dosu was in no condition to be moving around yet. Hand me a soldier pill. The first day of the Chunin exams would be in 2 weeks. Already shinobi from other villages were walking through the gates of Kumo. Naruto had received a letter from his Hokage that 3 members of his team were allowed to participate if he wanted them to. With the exception of Tayuya, who was still in sort of a probation period. Apparently, Gai's, Kakashi's, Asuma's and Kurenai's team have been entered. Konoha was allowed to enter 6 teams this time. Only 4 have been entered so far. He talked it over with his team and they all wanted to become Chunin, of course. It all came down to Jan Kenpon. Naruto had already decided to enter Gaara, just to have a strong guy in the Chunin exam. Dosu beat Konkaru with rock to scissor as they've all decided a girl should also be entered. So from Team Naruto, Gaara, Dosu and Tamari would be in the Chunin exams. Fancy seeing you here. Naruto was leaning against the wall opposite of the entrance of the Raikage's office when he heard his voice. Kakashi-sensei. Of course, he knew when Team Kakashi entered Kumo, as he had Fuin Bunshin patrolling all over the place. It's been a while. He tried to sound mature. Kakashi simply smiled and joined his former student. You have a meeting with Raikage-sama? The Jinchuriki held up a hand. We all do. I have my own team in this Chunin exams, so I expect the other Junin from Konoha here at any time. You're not a Junin, the copycat pointed out. Nervously scratching his head, Naruto grinned sheepishly. I may not be in Konoha, but they dubbed me Junin here in Kumo. They did? Yeah, it's a long story. He shrugged at Kakashi. Here's the rest. Just as he said, rounding the corner, came Yuhi Kurenai, Maeda Gai, Sarutobi Asuma, Shiranui Genma and Mitarashi Anko. Their subordinates were currently staying in their temporarily living quarters. Who's the brat? Naruto considered the purple-haired dango chewing woman approaching the 2 of them with a curious glance, not really knowing who she was, but remembering her from the Chunin exams in Konoha. This is my former student, Uzumaki Naruto. The apparent lack of surprise on Anko's face came as a slight surprise to Naruto. She already knew who I was, why ask the question? Why are you wearing a Kumo Junin uniform, brat? Anko came to a stop in front of him, her eyes strangely intimidating. Naruto didn't change his leaning form and calmly answered. I ran out of clothes. I didn't know I'd be staying here for such a long time. He had bought new clothes, but they were all dirty at the moment. Why did they give you a Junin uniform, Naruto? Asuma asked, while offering Kakashi a cigarette at the same time. The copycat declined. Because they somehow got this idea in their head I'm actually a Junin. Naruto didn't miss a beat. Relieved Anko stepped away from him to lean beside him against the same wall. You guys are all early. Antsy, huh? Someone thinks he's a big shot now, huh? Anko instantly shot back. Her grin was a bit too evil for Naruto's taste as she said that. You guys should be quiet. Came a gray-haired, tanned woman's voice, approaching them. She wore her hair in a bun, while loose strands framed her face. Raikage-sama doesn't like noise. Naruto dared to scoff at the remark, surprising the Junin present. Mind your manners, Naruto. The gray-haired woman gave him a very short smile, as if it was never there to begin with. They then noticed the desk next to the doors leading to the Raikage's office. It was actually her desk. It had been empty before. Seems he's getting friendly with Kumo, Kakashi surmised as Naruto walked up to the, what seemed to be, Raikage's assistant. Mabui-chan. How long's he going to take doing sit-ups in there? All Konoha Junin fell silent at that and Mabui bristled at Naruto. Be quiet, he can hear you, Naruto. Good. He yelled and then a door came crashing into Naruto. Naruto, shut up and get in here already. I've been waiting for hours. With his arms folded, stood in the opening of his office, seeing as the doors were now gone. The leader of Cloud looked as powerful as ever. His big intimidating form told the others he wasn't someone you could mess with. "You're a poor cage, eh? Why aren't you wearing your robe?" Of course, Naruto wasn't intimidated. The rest had to admit they wondered why the Raikage was only wearing pants. He was even barefoot. A small bolt of lightning paralyzed Naruto. "Be quiet," he ordered as he mentioned to the others to enter his office. He wouldn't tell them he had just been doing sit-ups. "I didn't know Konoha Nin were so punctual." Everyone from Konoha looked at Kakashi. "Most of us are." Kurenai replied as she looked at Naruto. "Is he?" "Brad'll be fine. Takes a few seconds, usually. Have to know somehow if he isn't actually a damned cage bunshin." It showed them a toothy grin. "Let's talk Chunin exams. I wish to borrow one of your own for the third test." "Hey, it's Naruto." Shikamaru cringed at Ino's always loud voice, before taking his gaze up from the ground. What a drag, if Hokage-sama sees him in Kumo uniform he'll be in trouble. The Nara noticed Naruto wasn't alone as a Kumo Chunin was walking next to him. "Naruto!" Choji yelled to get his attention. They were currently walking through a mildly busy street as most shops were closing. It was close to night already. "Over here." "Choji?" The blonde Chunin approached the three genin with a knowing smile on his face. "So, you're going for Chunin again?" "I had to drag these two slackers along," Ino explained, before narrowing her eyes at Naruto and the girl next to him. "I never did congratulate you, did I?" She held out her hand, which Naruto gladly took. "How's it feel, being Chunin?" "Not that different." Naruto shrugged, before pointing a thumb at the girl next to him. "This is Samui, also a Chunin." "Samui, these are Nara Shikamaru, Akamichi Choji and Yamanaka Ino." As they all shook heads and introduced each other, Ino shot Naruto a speculative look. He's changed so much from the loudmouth he used to be. He seems more mature. Who'd have guessed the class clown would become Chunin before all of us? As she remembered the matches of the Chunin exams in Konoha, she had to admit Naruto deserved the title. "Naruto told me his own team is also participating in the Chunin exams. I expect good things from them." Samui's voice brought her out of her musings. "Huh. We'll blow your team away, Naruto," Ino immediately shouted. "Your team? You have a team?" When Shikamaru said that, Ino had to admit her first reaction should have been more among those lines. "Yeah, I have a team of 5 genin. 3 of them are also in the exams. You better watch your back, they're really good." Naruto boasted a bit. "So, you're a Chunin, but you have your own team?" the Akamichi of the group asked. Why are you wearing a Kumo uniform, Naruto?" Ino asked, just noticing it and looking him over. "Hate to admit it, but they look sharper than Konoha uniforms. I ran out of my own outfits because of training." The blonde Chunin scratched the back of his head in slight embarrassment. All the Fuinjutsu seals he implemented in his usual outfit weren't in this one. He didn't trust it, who knows these things might be traceable. "You two on a date?" Naruto and Samui regarded each other, before turning back to Ino. "No, we're not." Samui was the one who answered. "Just like with you, we just walked into each other. Coincidentally, we're both looking for a place to have dinner." "Coincidentally?" Ino deadpanned, before smirking at the slightly older girl who, much to her chagrin, was very well developed in certain areas. "Coincidentally, we are also looking for a place to eat." "We'd best find somewhere then." Samui's cold demeanor somehow got to Ino. "Samui-san, you said you knew a good ramen show." "We're not eating ramen, Naruto," Ino screeched. "Well, at least some things don't change." The Yamanaka walked behind and couldn't help but notice the changes Naruto had undergone. Guy actually looks like a decent shinobi now. His hair was a lot longer than the last time she saw him. He could easily wear it in a ponytail, but he didn't, creating a huge mess of blonde hair all around his face. The Hite-Aid was probably what kept all the bangs away from his eyes. He had also grown a lot taller and was now the same height as Shikamaru, which was taller than herself. Naruto was no short shrimp anymore. Samui, walking next to Naruto, was about the same height, only slightly shorter. "What are you doing in Kumo, Naruto?" she heard Choji ask Naruto. "It's a long story, I'll tell during dinner." His best friend was in his own perfect little world. eating away with all his might. Another barbecue place, he should have known. Picking away at his own food in a much slower rate, Shikamaru made some small talk with the other people at the table, but was mostly observing, as always. Ino was the one who was talking the most, also, as always. So we went on a mission with Team 8, you know, with Hinata, Kiba and Shino. Man, Kiba's such a prick. Shikamaru had a knack for tuning out incessant noises. Ino was talking about something he had heard before, anyway. How Kiba held a grudge against her for beating him during the Chunin exams. He might have found it amusing if he would take the time to think about it, he didn't. Team 8, huh? I think Shino's good, he heard Naruto say. I wish I could always stay as calm as he is. This made Shikamaru narrow his eyes a bit at his own food. Naruto's changed so much if he can even point out his own flaws without shame. So, why are you here, Naruto? You've been gone for a long time, about 4 months? Ino grinned at him, having not touched her own plate of meat yet. Konoha's pretty quiet these days. The male blonde grinned back, while allowing Samui, from his left, to grab the salt to his right. I've been here for almost 3 months, actually. Hokage-sama gave me permission to run missions from Kumo for the time being. Raikage-sama didn't mind. Right, Samui? The Kumo nin nodded her head, her expression still neutral while chewing on some piece of food. After swallowing it down, she looked at the Konoha nin in front of her. Raikage-sama has allowed Naruto and his team to join missions with our own team. They do not get paid. Or rather, Kumo does not pay them. Yeah, and it's all boring missions too. Naruto whined, cutting a piece of meat in two on his plate. Mostly escort and retrieval. We haven't had any real action for weeks. Weeks? So he did have real action about a month ago? Shikamaru read between the lines. The Chunin with him doesn't seem to be keeping tabs on him, so he can just walk around freely here, too? How can your team enter the Chunin exams, Naruto? The young Nara finally spoke up, having finished his meal. No offense, but they all haven't been Konoha nin for a very long time. The only Konoha Chunin at the table shortly wiped his mouth with a handkerchief before replying. You're right, they haven't. But Hokage-sama did give me permission to enter them. That's all I know, and I do have faith in my subordinates. He still struggled with the word. I trust them, too. So I'm guessing Sabaku no Gaara is in this exam? Shikamaru continued. Naruto smiled at the Nara. While the blonde knew Shikamaru would become a very close friend in the future, they were not real friends at the moment. Yeah, he's in. But he's not the only one you should worry about. The others are just as dangerous. A gleam of mischief danced over his orbs as he said this. But it seems you know who's in my team. The Nara had to admit that the blonde had become more perceptive and nodded. Kinuta Dosu and the Sabaku 3. Correct, but there's another one. I'll let you find out for yourself who the final member of my team is. So you have 5 genin working under you? Ino asked. That's pretty cool, Naruto. Shikamaru didn't know there was another member, but realized he probably wouldn't find out who it was. So who are the other 2 you're entering? Dosu, Gaara and Temari. Naruto answered truthfully. He didn't see any harm in telling Shikamaru. I'll warn my team about you, you know? They'll be prepared for your skills. A good captain prepares his team. What about us? We're your comrades too, right? The blonde of Team 10 responded immediately. Tell us about their skills. Instead of Naruto, Shikamaru answered. We already know, Ino. They've all participated in the previous exam, remember? He then tilted his head, looked at Naruto and released an agitated sigh. It's a troublesome team, though, sound, sand and wind. Ho, you're good, Shikamaru. But the Nara was deep in thought. If the Chunin exams here in Kumo are the same as in Konoha, then we definitely have to avoid that team. The next day, Naruto was summoned by Kakashi, by use of a crumbled piece of paper handed at him by Kankuro. Yo. Kakashi wasn't surprised that Naruto could sneak up to him these days. Chakra signature sensing and Hiraishin, Naruto? All that on your day off? It would take a reasonable chunk out of one's chakra reserves, but Naruto was a Jinchuriki, thankfully. You do know how Hiraishin works, right, Kakashi-sensei? It takes a bit more than just sensing a chakra signature. Closing the small book he was reading, Kakashi turned to him. I know. You probably stuck some Fuin seal on me, huh? A long time ago, during a spar, I used Oitsumeru on you. It was tricky, too, had to use several clones to pull it off without you noticing it. The blonde explained as he took a look at the small park Kakashi was in. Are you slacking off, Kakashi-sensei? Haha, Kakashi chuckled a bit. No, I'm waiting for the others. Oh, I see, you've received another mission? Kakashi made a single motion with his hand telling Naruto not to mention anything else. We'll wait. Naruto understood. There might be eavesdroppers. What better place to have a private meeting than out in the open? As moments passed, they were joined, respectively, by Yuhi Kurenai, Sarutobi Asuma, Maeda Gai, Shiranui Genma and Mitarashi Anko. Naruto, could you perform an encrypted sound barrier? The only Chunin present blinked at his former teacher. How do you? The copycat cut him off. Can you do it? He nodded, still somewhat surprised. Kenpo. Madden. Zatai Fugen. He whispered after a few complicated hand seals. Perhaps it's smart if. Kakashi cut him off again. Kurenai's already on it. With a sound barrier and a powerful genjutsu around them, Kakashi knew he could speak freely. Where's Guy? He heard Naruto ask. He's watching our backs for anything that could disrupt our little meeting. Kakashi took a look at the Junin around him, with Sharingan revealed, to check for any anomalies. Sensing none, he started. The 7 of us have an extra mission during these Chunin exams. I will be your commanding officer. Now, I know Genma and Anko already have the mission to watch and protect the Hyuga, while Naruto has his infiltration mission still active and since yesterday a role in the second test of the Chunin exams. This mission therefore rests mainly on my, Guy's, Asuma's and Kurenai's shoulders. But should it be necessary, it is required of all of you to assist us at any time. He then turned to Naruto. You will be anchor point for the entire duration of our stay in Kumo. Because you know the Hiraishin. Naruto was amazed when Kakashi suddenly pulled out a few Hiraishin kunai. Can you still work with these? Kakashi handed him the string of kunai and watched Naruto frown. These are the same seals, mostly, but give me a day to figure things out. The lazy Junin nodded his head. Now, on to our mission. Everyone turned to him seriously. The retrieval of the body of Hyuga Hizashi. Naruto didn't comprehend. I don't have any active Fuin Bunshin at the moment, because when I create Fuin Bunshin, they also copy what I wear, but I've had them active for the entire first month I was here. I haven't come across anyone mentioning that name. Kakashi nodded again. That's fine, I have a few ideas on where the body is kept. My first order to you is to make sure you fix your uniform, Naruto. Gaara was practicing his sand transformation skills and was currently, literally, a raging tornado of sand. Contrary to popular belief, transforming your body hurts like hell. By practicing this, Gaara would somehow raise his own resistance against the pain of sand transformation. Close to where he was training, but far away to not get hurt by Gaara's wide-scale practices, Dosu was tinkering with a few of the metal devices on his body, while seated on a tree branch. The insides of his ears, his mouth, his right arm, his right eye, the palm of his left hand and his chest were metallic. At the moment, he was checking the insides of his right arm, having gathered enough information to make small adjustments. This thing could be smaller. Hey, yo. Time stood still. Dosu sat completely frozen while the sand tornado that was Gaara had completely dwindled down, to see a wide-eyed Gaara. These two really didn't like Kurabi's presence. Not only because of his out-of-tune rapping and out-of-rhythm dancing, but also because Kurabi was, undoubtedly stronger than them. It irked the both of them a bit more than much. Gaara materialized immediately, letting the wind take him far away. As Kurabi watched the sand scatter, he turned to Dosu, only to see an empty tree branch. He wanted to follow after the mummy like shinobi, but realized the footsteps he was hearing were coming from every direction. Damn slackers be lazy, with me they ought to go crazy. The 8-tailed Jinchuriki pointed his right arm up at the sky. Kurabi is amazing, you should be appraising. Sensei, why did we come here? Kurabi only then seemed to notice his 3 students. You guys are late, Kurabi says it straight. Karui spoke up again. Shut up, he's a bit weird. Tamari was busy cooking up a meal in the kitchen when Tayuya suddenly joined her in the kitchen. She didn't like cooking and didn't care at all whether people like her cooking. But she made a deal with Kankaru and Gaara to take turns. Naruto was in some kind of meeting and Dosu was still off training with Gaara. Tayuya would be joining her and Kankaru for dinner tonight. Who's weird? Tamari asked as she checked the taste of the soup she was boiling with a spoon. Naruto. How can such an aloof person be our captain? The redhead continued, carefully watching the spoon in Tamari's hands and making sure she wouldn't let that same spoon touch the soup again. Aloof? He acts all happy-go-lucky, but that's all bullshit. You haven't seen him in a serious fight like I have. I was there when he defeated that guy called Kimimaro. She threw the spoon in the zinc before deciding to add some salt to the soup. Before that, he defeated Asuna Junin with one hit. You'll see, eventually, just who he is. That kid's strong. I mean, we're both his senior. We should be giving him orders. Maybe, maybe not. Tamari shrugged, before walking out of the kitchen and noticing her brother tinkering with a new metal puppet. Kankaru, stop playing with your toys and set the table. Kankaru offered a dry look. He was off training by himself, practicing and perfecting his newer set of jutsu, when he sensed someone nearby. Probably been there for quite some time. I really have to practice not getting sneaked up on. Thankfully I haven't practiced any, revealing jutsu. Naruto stopped what he was doing and faced the tree he sensed the shinobi in. What's up? He was surprised to see Mitarashi Anko jump down with a devious smirk on her face. I'm in for a bit of a spar, kid. You up for a battle of tag? You want to play tag? The blonde stared blankly, almost through Anko. You run, I throw kunai. You stop, I kick your ass, she offered. No thanks, Anko-san. He bowed shortly. I was just heading home. Anko used Shunshin to get behind him, but was shocked to find Naruto used Shunshin almost instantly after to get behind her. Impressive, brat. You're not going to just let me go, huh? I kinda have a busy schedule, you know? You have something better to do than hang out with me? Anko was pleased he knew when not to answer a question. He was still standing behind her when she, with kunai in hand, planned to strike him. But Naruto had appeared behind her again as she turned. She pouted, quite cutely. Naruto had to admit. You're fast. That's really boring. If we spar and I don't hold back, she'll tell that old man just how strong I really am, were Naruto's thoughts as he tried to think of a way to get out of the weird situation he was in. I have a feeling that, if I do hold back, she's gonna notice and force me to up the ante. Not cool. He blinked, quickly deciding not to copy that particular phrase from Samui. And then Anko started performing hand seals. Shit on a stick, Naruto snarled. I want you all quiet. Came a lazy drawl from a guy standing in front of a gathering of loud genin. If you won't be quiet in 5 seconds, you will be disqualified. Darui actually hoped they didn't hear him so he could just end this Chunin exam this instant. Unfortunately, some people did hear and they relayed the message. He closed his eyes and sighed deeply, letting his crowd know he did not want to be here. I assume you all expect to become Chunin. His voice actually made you just want to sleep. In the crowd, Ino jabbed Shikamaru in the rib and asked if they were related. Somewhere in the back, Sasuke was leaning against a wall, with Sai seated on the ground next to him. Sakura was standing in front of them, listening intently. Kiba was up in the front, checking out the competition, knowing Hinata and Shino were listening to the proctor's story. Ten was keeping Lee's mouth shut, as he was always quick to yell and shout. Neji looked like he wanted to use Kaden in the crowded room. But that won't happen. He didn't crack a smile. It was no joke. The first test is a battle. Only one member of your team is allowed to partake in this battle. You have 5 minutes to decide which of you will be taking this test. That one member is responsible for your team's advance to the second test of the Chunin exam. Choose wisely. While it was quite obvious Gaara was the stronger member of their team of 3, Tamari and Dosu were no slouches either. They both expected Gaara to say he'll fight as he turned to them, but to their surprise, he said, "Rock, paper, scissors?" As Darui observed the teams of blabbering genin in front of him, he had to resist the urge to chuckle. He never did say what kind of battle it was going to be. As Kinuta Dosu stepped forward, he smiled behind his mask. With paper to rocks, he beat both Gaara and Temari. The only thing left to do was win this first test battle. Darui sighed and said, "It looks like everyone has made up their minds. Alright, the rest of you stays in this classroom. Those who represent their team, follow me." Gaara and Temari looked at each other as some people left the room. Temari asked her brother, "Where do you think they're going?" As an eye of sand hovered around Gaara, he muttered, "Daisen no mi." The third eye went out the window to look for their teammate after saying, "I will keep an eye on Dosu." The classroom was quiet until all of a sudden Darui walked back in. "I'll go ahead and assume you've chosen the strongest member of your team to represent you." "No way." Sakura's eyes got big when she saw the cheap trick. Sasuke had already agreed to fight from her team. Luckily, Sai was stronger than Sasuke, even though she didn't want to admit it. That means Darui was wrong about her team. She caught a glimpse of Gaara from Naruto's team out of the corner of her eye. That meant their team wasn't in any danger either. The smarter ones might have figured out that the one sent away will not be participating in this first test. No, one of the two left from your team here will be chosen to fight a member from the other team, in this classroom. To make matters worse, there will be rules to this battle. Because he had his eyes closed the whole time, Darui looked around to make sure that everyone was paying attention. Once he was sure, he went on. 1. I'll pick who fights who. 2. You can't damage anything in this room. If you do, you'll lose right away. Everyone looked around the classroom and saw that there were many tables and chairs. Before, they thought the classroom was big, but now they thought it was too small to really fight in. And 3. You're not allowed to use chakra to enhance your movements. So no sticking to the walls or ceiling. Darui lowered his arms. It also means you can't speed up or use shunshin, but I don't think any of these kids know how to do that. All right. First up. He took out a list of all the genin who were there. The names of the people who were already out of the room were crossed out. A boy with short green hair and a little tan said, "Konoha nin Yamanaka Ino versus Kumo nin Yukiriki Ichija. Please confirm you know the rules." Both Ino and Ichija nodded. "Very well. Whenever you're ready." Gaara put his hand over his mouth to hide the smile that was growing on his face, which caught Temari's eye. What's so funny, Gaara?" "Dosu's going to be disappointed when he finds out he's not fighting at all. His paper to our rock was actually his loss." Gaara's movements were copied by Temari, who had to hide her laughter. Zetsu has come with rather disturbing news. They hadn't been all together like this in a while. As always, Uchiha Itachi had his Sharingan active as he looked at the other Akatsuki agents. The only person who was really there was Pain. He used a special jutsu to make everyone else present through him. There was Zetsu, and his shape was clear. The Venus flytrap shinobi could see and hear everything in the land. He couldn't really miss anything. He was the best spy ever. Chakra was still rolling off of Kisame like it was nothing, even though Pain let him have a picture of him at this meeting. The man who looked like a shark couldn't help but smile. Hidan was always angry, even when he was hunched over on top of one of the ceiling statue's fingers. Itachi didn't care. It looked like Kakuzu was wearing a suitcase over his shoulder. The suitcase was probably full of money from another bounty. Itachi liked Kakuzu because he was straightforward. Also, he's likely lived longer than everyone else here. Conan stood next to Pain and was very quiet. She wasn't there in body, which was strange because she usually was. Her shape was stiff. Itachi thought it looked like his own shape. The statue's finger held Deidara in place, and she looked like she didn't care about anything. And he looked like he had his hands busy with something. For Pain's jutsu to work, it didn't look like you had to be meditating or just sitting still. It was no surprise that Sasori was hiding in Hiriko, his puppet, to be close to Deidara. It was impossible to read Sasori. The finger made Toby jump back and forth. He couldn't stay still. But Itachi knew what was really going on behind the happy front. This was all he did in less than 2 seconds, the same amount of time Pain took to pause. He then turned back to Pain. Itachi and Kisame, while faced with 3 Jinchuriki, came back with none. This was understandable, as the Raikage and Jiraiya-sama were both present. Even though the Uchiha didn't narrow his eyes, he always wondered why Pain respected Jiraiya so much. Some members snorted, which was to be expected. There were some cocky people in Akatsuki, after all. And it is no easy feat facing 3 Jinchuriki at the same time. I'll have to admit you did admirable getting away. Pain said more. But you did give them a good warning. Taking out 2 Jinchuriki in a cage in seconds left them with a good impression on how strong the Akatsuki is. And he did it all by himself. Kisame complained, still not happy about how little he had to do in that fight. About a month later, Hidan and Kakuzu met the Kyuubi and the Nibi Jinchuriki. The Nibi Jinchuriki is a Junin, but the Kyuubi is only a Chunin. A Junin and a Chunin shouldn't be a problem for someone from Akatsuki. He gave Hidan and Kakuzu a short glare, but the Kyuubi swam away from his face. But Jinchuriki can be tricky to deal with. Itachi. Itachi raised his head a little. Did you fight the Kyuubi Jinchuriki? No, I used Tsukiyomi, as both the Kyuubi and the Shukaku Jinchuriki seemed about to transform. I didn't need chaos. He told us. He had told Pain this before, but not in front of the whole group. At that point, he hadn't even told anyone that when he used the Shoraizu, all he saw was blackness. It's bothersome if they can both transform. The Shukaku Jinchuriki has become a Konoha nin. Sanagakure is very weak at the moment and at war with Konoha. Perhaps, we can join Suna. In disguise, we can deal several blows to Konoha, which seems to be growing too strong lately. The same applies to Kumogakure. There's talk of a possible alliance between the two, but I think that won't happen, considering certain happenings in the past. Pain took his eyes off of Itachi. Sasori, Deidara, your objective will be the one-tail. Bring him in. Hidan and Kakuzu, bring in the two-tail. The rest will focus on missions from Tsuchigakure and on bounties. Dismissed. The one-tail and the two-tail were both in Kumo, so he didn't have to say that this meant Sasori, Deidara, Hidan, and Kakuzu should work together. The leader never said what was obvious, though. Time flex. You cannot use all of them at the same time. He stopped to unwrap a scroll on the ground and motioned for the person listening to sit down. But I've found a way to switch body affinity. With it, you are able to use all elements, just not at the same time. The Fuinjutsu required for this takes a few seconds to activate, and a few more for your body to adjust. Hence the Kage Bunshin distraction. There are 5 elements. I can use Doden and Fuuden, but I have to switch twice, because my body can only use 2 elements, right? Naruto looked at Naruto, who was younger. Right now, this switch is easily modifiable. Your body is young, indeed unable to hold more than 2 elements. But you're going to mature in here, or our limit is 3 elements. I'll tell you now, the third and final element your body can use is Suiden. You are completely unable to mold chakra into a Kaden or Raiden element, ever. But thanks to this switch, your entire chakra system can alter. For now, this Fuinjutsu allows for 2 switches. One so your body is attuned to Kaden and Raiden and the other for Suiden. Your original is already Fuuden and Doden. He took the scroll out of its wrapping and began pointing to different symbols. Study all of this, Naruto. I want you to be able to draw this blindly. Fuinjutsu will save everything in the end. You have to know all of this, and more. End the backup. He didn't get it. He didn't like not getting it. He couldn't help but think about recent events as he walked with his partner. He knew that his Shoraizu hadn't told him anything specific, but the fact that he would be unconscious was hard for him to understand. After the Shukaku and Kyuubi Jinchuriki stood in front of him that day, he saw nothing but darkness, in shock. He was sure his Shoraizu wasn't lying that day after seeing how hard Hidan and Kakuzu were pushed by only the Nibi Jinchuriki and the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. He had never been lied to before, but the idea that Sabaku no Gaara, a Genin Jinchuriki, and Uzumaki Naruto, a Chunin Jinchuriki, could make him doubt himself made him very interested. He and Gaara were both only 13 years old. There was no way they could control that much chakra from their Biju at that age. He was sure they would only get worse and worse. Since he usually got things right, should he tell Pain or Madara about this suspicion? He might be able to use this information to further his own plans. Yes, his plan might need to be changed. So, what should we do? Itachi gave Kisame a quick look and then turned his attention back to the front. The usual. In other words, they would wait for a bad team from Kumo, Suna, Tsuchi, or Konoha and then try to get some bounty money. He didn't care about the short fights going on around him. It was bound to end quickly in every fight. The reason for this was the rule that said you would be disqualified if you broke even one thing, like a chair or a table. You could use ninjutsu, but if you missed, you would definitely destroy something in the room. Gaara was expecting smart moves, but he couldn't help but frown when one guy started throwing a chair at his opponent, thinking that the other guy would block it and break it. The other player would, of course, dodge, and the chair would hit the wall. Really bad strategy. The examiner said that one genin could be kicked out of the exam, but the team would keep going, even if there was only one member. Nara Shikamaru from Konoha Team 10 got past by controlling his opponent with his shadow and letting her scratch a table with a kunai. Yamanaka Ino got past by dodging a ninjutsu. Gaara saw that there were no Suna teams there, but that didn't surprise him. Given that Suna had lost their Jinchuriki, they were likely in the middle of a lot of trouble. From Konoha Team 8, Inazuka Kiba was kicked out because he messed up his own spinning Gatsuga and hit the wall, damaging it only slightly. In the end, you were not allowed to hurt anything in the room. Hinata was the one who moved quickly enough to avoid the chair and get a pass. From Konoha Team 7, Sai easily got through by taking out his opponent in just 2 seconds. Gaara had rolled his eyes at how well he was doing at the time. Because Sakura is so rough, she just smashed her opponent into the wall. In this case, she was lucky that the examiner said her opponent broke the wall, not Sakura with her opponent. This was a very simple Futon ninjutsu move that Tamari used from his own team. It made her opponent fly to the ceiling. The girl was hit by Tamari right into the only light in the classroom. Because the light was damaged, the girl who was hit lost and Tamari passed. Gaara's turn had come. Besides that, he easily beat his opponent in just 2 seconds. He used his sand to protect everything in the room and then threw a huge wave of sand at his opponent. The examiner saw that the wave had not damaged anything, which was impossible since it had covered almost the whole room except for the people who were there, and he passed Gaara because his opponent was unconscious. The test master told them that everyone who passed could spend the day at home. The next test is in 2 days. There were still a lot of people taking part, but Gaara didn't want to watch these genin any longer. He and Tamari chose to go home because of this. That is, go home and laugh at Dosu. The old man with the binoculars was crouched in front of him as he called him, which didn't surprise him at all. Not at all a surprise. What the hell? Where the hell am I? Naruto pushed the tick off his forehead. He had a hard time biting out. Jiraiya-sama. He said under his breath, Hentai-sama sounds a lot better. Jiraiya got up from his crouch and asked, Naruto? The binoculars were miraculously gone. Naruto thought that Jiraiya probably had a Fuin seal somewhere that could call up binoculars. Really, what some people thought was most important. Where are we? You summoned me here. The first thing he did was sigh. Yeah, we're in Wave. He always went to Wave to talk about important things. He liked how quiet and peaceful it was in the forests, which is where he met Haku for the first time. He poured chakra into one of his vest pockets to make a scroll appear. I want to talk to you about something important, but before I do, I want you to promise that this stays between you and my team. I also want you to promise that you won't tell Hokage-sama about this. He was dressed in his Chunin outfit, which he liked to call his Chunin Fuin outfit, but not out loud. He got down on his knees and opened the scroll on the ground. He then looked at Jiraiya with a very serious face. You promise me by blood. He looked at Naruto and then at the scroll. He saw right away that Naruto was very serious, so he was too. What does this scroll do? Jiraiya saw Naruto's eyes get sad for a moment. I call this the promise scroll. Anyone who makes a promise to me, will do so by blood. By combining Fuinjutsu with blood, the most intricate things are possible. You notice that the scroll is empty, right? Jiraiya gave her approval. Everyone on my team has made a promise to never betray Konoha and never betray the team. A blood promise. And they did so in this scroll. The way this works is very similar to the Buseiken, Oitsumeru no Jutsu. The title of this scroll is Kesho Jikimono. The blood scroll. He stopped to take a breath. With your blood combined with your chakra, I've made this Fuinjutsu able to keep track of your active blood. Jiraiya took a deep breath and frowned. He still didn't fully understand what was going on. In other words, by use of different Fuin skills, I am able to track you down when you are lying, are nervous, are excited, are anxious, are scared, when you are dying and when you were breaking this particular promise. You see here that I can only use this fuinjutsu after I've told you what I want to tell you, because blood changes by the seconds. Jiraiya really said, this sounds impossible. You can't monitor someone's blood pressure all the time by use of fuinjutsu. The blonde smiled. Exactly, not all the time. Everyone's blood is unique. This blood scroll has dozens of fuin seals inscribed in it, every single one allowing for different results. One dominant fuin seal ascertains a constant, but very thin connection between the blood in the scroll and the blood in your body. A smaller, but by no means small, fuin seal only responds to the breaking of the promise. Another fuin seal will respond when you are, for example, lying. But each separate fuin seal requires at least a drop of blood. The one I request of you requires 16, as it is quite difficult to detect the change in blood flow when someone is breaking a promise. How do you know such advanced fuinjutsu, Naruto? Jiraiya asked the son of a former student through narrowed eyes. He knew so much about fuinjutsu that not even the fourth knew as much as he did. I will tell you if you promise me you will give me 16 drops of your blood and pour a considerable amount of your chakra into this scroll, was the quick reply. The idea was on Jiraiya's mind. Even though it wasn't very important to him, old man Sarutobi was interested in how strong Naruto really was after the Chunin exams in Konoha. But the Toad Sage knew that the third had already told Kakashi and Anko to find out as soon as possible. He had nothing to do with it. It was fine for him to keep the kid's secrets, just that. Secrets. He also owed him it. After all, he was his godfather. He smiled when he saw how grown-up Naruto looked, with his hands on the scroll on the ground and a serious, out-of-this-world look on his face. All right, Naruto. I promise that what you tell me will stay between us. One of the Chunins looked at Jiraiya for a second or two. A promise means a lot to me, Jiraiya-sama. I want you to promise me, literally, that you'll give me 16 drops of blood in your chakra before I start talking. Jiraiya laughed and said, God, you're impossible. He liked seeing Naruto's ghostly smile, but it was gone because Naruto was focused on business. You're just like your father. I promise you will have 16 drops of my blood and some of my chakra as soon as you want it. The boy was happy and nodded his head. I suppose a considerable amount of chakra is still just some to a chakra freak like you. But it's true. With the amount of chakra needed for this, a guy like Shikamaru would be running on empty. The two of them were not the same. Alright then. You're going to have to brace yourself, Jiraiya-sama. For this tale will be somewhat hard to believe. Give it to me straight, Naruto. I'm old and I have seen a lot. This can't be anything too weird. Before he spoke again, Naruto shook his head with a smile. His next words would likely make Jiraiya laugh. Madden ninjutsu. There are only a few of them, right? Well, let's just say I've had a visit from myself, from the future. Time travel. How? He kept going even though Naruto had been wrong about Jiraiya. It's a modified Hiraishin by use of blood and fuinjutsu and blood experiments. Time travel was made possible by Medic Nin. By creating a younger version of his own blood and his own blood circulation, my future self was able to get a detailed version of me in the past. And then, he had to create a combination of a Keshao Fuin seal and the Hiraishin seal. The result was risky time travel, but time travel nonetheless. He clenched his fist and put it to his chin. By that explanation, shouldn't you also be able to create an older version of your own blood? You could travel to the future? He didn't understand why Jiraiya believed everything he said. It doesn't matter. To be able to modify blood on that level, my future self told me that it was near impossible even in the future. He saw Jiraiya. The only way to speed that up is for the average Medic Nin to evolve. The hermit asked with some distaste, you say Medic Nin, but don't you mean scientist? Orochimaru suddenly appeared in his mind. Well, maybe a real Medic Nin is also a bit of a scientist, the blonde said, but she wasn't sure. Anyway, you're not even slightly surprised when I say my future self visited me? Jaecrea slowly replied, I am. But I believe you. I'm guessing your future self is quite the fuinjutsu specialist? The best. Naruto looked at them with awe. Even though he was me, I considered him as a sort of father. He was me, but not really, you know? So he taught you everything he knows? Jiraiya asked with real interest. So you know a lot of Fuinjutsu skills? He told him, yeah, he taught me a lot. Jiraiya made him think of his future self for some reason. He felt sad when he thought about how his future self had died right in front of his eyes. The sad looks were missed by Jiraiya, which made Naruto happy. So, show me then. You're strong, aren't you? Now that I know, you don't have to hold back anymore. You're right. Naruto's sadness went away as a high of joy hit him hard. You're Jiraiya-sama, one of the legendary ninjas. I can go all out against you. Jiraiya had to take a step back after hearing that and seeing what Naruto did as he rose from the ground. Senjutsu. He was shocked when he saw that Naruto's eyes showed signs of that power. Why, you know. Naruto lifted his head and smiled. Yeah, I've perfected the style completely. It only takes me 1 second to activate. 1 second of complete tranquility allows for the wielding of the toad style. Uriah put out his hand and said, wait. He now knew Naruto was dangerous. It was very risky to use Senjutsu. In this state, he was almost impossible to beat. He wanted to say it was impossible, but this proof made him change his mind. Instead, he screamed, how can you still look so normal? As he pointed out Naruto's still normal hair and face. Normal. According to Jiraiya, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, give me a few minutes of silence, please. It takes me a bit longer to enter Senjutsu mode. Naruto found it funny that the Great Toad Hermit seemed miffed. As the minutes went by, he was shocked at how Jiraiya's appearance changed. After that he laughed his ass off. B-rapped as he danced through the streets of Kumogakure. He ain't near, he ain't here. Where the hell did that 9 go? Wonder where he went and if he's okay. He should bumping fists with B, but instead he's out, completely, free. When that last word was said, Kurabi realized that Konoha had just let its Jinchuriki go to other villages in this way. He stopped dancing. He just thought of this. He usually doesn't mope around, but he just couldn't help it. They were both Jinchuriki from Konoha, like Gaara and Naruto. They were free to go where they wanted, but he was always stuck in Kumo. His mind had a thought. He might learn how to do the Hiraishin from Naruto. Hiraishin meant being free. He did know, though, that shinobi don't just give up their jutsu. He was sure he had to know Fuinjutsu to be able to beat someone like Hiraishin. Not just any Fuinjutsu, but very advanced Fuinjutsu. In the middle of a busy street, he was sitting down with his arms crossed over his chest. Damn, yo. This shit's hard to figure out, I'll have to bow to him, no doubt. And the kid's not easy to read, not even with this killer beat. Behind his glasses, he blinked. Kurabi would be busy for at least 4 hours thinking about the 2 words that sound almost exactly the same. Killer beat. Killer B has a killer beat. Oh yeah, after that, the Hiraishin's thoughts would come back. The way Jiraiya was holding himself up against a big rock made him gasp for air. Naruto stood up straight on his knees in front of him, just like before. What the hell, you're the strongest, Chunin, I've ever faced, kid. You should hear what I did to Orochimaru during those Chunin exams. I've been dying to tell someone. He pulled his pants up around his waist. Both of their toad modes had been taken away for a long time. It turned into a full-on ninjutsu and taijutsu battle after the senjutsu battle. Naruto wasn't tired, but he didn't want to show Jiraiya his Jinchuriki mode just yet. Before the fight, Naruto teleported them both to a mountain area in Earth Country that was close to them but not near Iwagakure. He didn't want to hurt Wave's favorite forest, after all. The fight was over, and both sides were happy that there wasn't a clear winner. If Naruto sat down on the rocky ground and said, Jiraiya-sama, it meant he was done sparring. He had to pull a few rocks out from under his behind to make himself sit down properly. Telling you about that time travel jutsu and showing you my real strength weren't the only reasons I summoned you. Jiraiya sat down in front of Naruto and let out a final sigh and groan, which should stop him from panting. They weren't. One of the other reasons I summoned you is because I need to travel to the Land of Iron. I want to do this without my team, so these Chunin exams in Kumo are perfect. And the 2 who aren't participating, Tayuya and Konkaru, are currently taking easy missions from the Raikage, to be executed within Kumo. I need to pick something up in the Land of Iron, and to do so I have to gain the acknowledgement of a guy named Mifune. Jiraiya said, Oh, old man Mifune. I know him well. He thought Mifune was about 10 years younger than Sarutobi Hiruzen, which would make him between 62 and 64 years old. He was 51 years old, Jiraiya. You're going to have a hard time with that guy, he's a real piece of work, like a rock. There was no doubt in Naruto's determination. The other and final reason I summoned you is because of a request. Jiraiya made a joke, another one? But it didn't get through. Akatsuki, I want to crush them. No one missed the cruel tone in Naruto's voice. I have to admit, if you hadn't just given me a very hard time, I would say you'd get squashed by even a single member, but I guess what you want isn't too impossible. I am training myself every day as hard as I can. I leave a clone in Kumo and go training at random places. Sometimes I take my team with me, sometimes I drop them off at separate places. I've taught all of them the Kage Bunshin, so they all have a shadow clone with their chakra signature in Kumo. We're all training as hard as we can and they know what I want. They now, as much as me, want to completely crush Akatsuki. He turned his head sideways. He added in a dry way, well, maybe Tayuya isn't that into it yet. So what is your request, then? My squad, I intend for my team to become the best of the best. Able to take out the Akatsuki. I want you to be our leader. That worry hasn't been there in a long time. For the past few days, she had been dying from the stress and worry that never went away. She could finally rest in peace today after a week of not being able to. Shizune was back to normal. When Shizune took one of Naruto's pills, she went through a huge change. With her chakra levels, it looked like she turned into the Raikage himself. From what I can tell, the pills were made to temporarily raise your chakras to a higher level. That thing that took your chakra supplies seemed to make them make as much chakra as a person would in 3 days. Perhaps even more. Shizune was still Shizune, except that her chakra had changed. Tsunade wanted to spar with her to see if she was stronger or faster now. She was, by a good amount. Shizune had never pushed Tsunade back that far. She could still handle her, but the fact that they were on equal footing scared her. Shizune fell to the ground after the chakra surge stopped. Tsunade went crazy because she looked like a dead body. Even though she wasn't really dead, she looked a lot like she was. As promised, the pill did use up 3 to 4 days worth of chakra. With no more chakra, Shizune was about to die. There was only one quick way to handle this. Infusion of chakras along with her own Sozo Saisei. Her condition was still very bad until a few days ago. Tsunade started to worry less only yesterday. Thank goodness it was just extreme chakra exhaustion and not something blood-related. But the pills had great effects, and the side effects were terrible. She would have to make something that could help with this chakra drainage. It was true, Tsunade was interested in making a new medicine. But if she saw that Naruto kid again, she would beat him up for making Shizune feel that way. After that, she would fix him up and do it 12 times. But now was the right time to find out more about how these pills were made. She didn't think a kid like Naruto would know, though. He also told her it was made for Jinchuriki, right? He seemed strange to her, she was sure of it. We need more intel on the Kyuubi brat. What? Are you scared of him, yeah? Deidara, you should never underestimate a Jinchuriki. A Jinchuriki that is 3 years old can bite hard, Sasori said as he walked forward next to him without his Hiriko puppet. Kakuzu is right, it doesn't hurt to know more about a Jinchuriki's skills. Every Jinchuriki, after all, is still a bit of a human. Hidan said, it would be so much easier if we could just kill them. We're going to kill them in the end anyway, right? Why not just drag their corpses back and be done with it? Deidara laughed and asked, are you stupid? I know I don't really pay attention during those long-winded speeches Nagato gives us, but even I know the Jinchuriki have to be alive to be able to extract the demon out of them. Or did Nagato never mention that, and is it because I'm a genius that I know? He pointed his finger in the front and said, yeah, you're a genius. A girl genius. You freaking woman. Cut your hair already. What's that, you old cuss? Only old guys have gray hair. Do all Jashin followers age quickly or something? Deidara asked in a rude tone. Hidan yanked out his scythe in anger and said, hey, the moment you insult Jashin is the moment you choose death. When Kakuzu spoke, Sasori just kept walking with his usual poker face on and said, shut up, Hidan. Zetsu wants to talk. The dark Zetsu said, who? You knew I was here? Impressive. Even more impressive is the fact you know I wanted to say something. This is what Kakuzu meant when he said, "We need more information on the Kyuubi brat." He then looked at Zetsu as he slowly came out of a tree. All of them had already stopped walking, but Sasori didn't stop until Zetsu came out. "Truthfully, me stating you want to talk is me demanding an answer from you." Hidan said, "I didn't know you were a censor nin, Kakuzu." He then put his scythe back on his back, but not before giving Deidara the death glare. The only thing Deidara did was roll his eyes and put the clay back in his mouth. "I steal shinobi's beating hearts," the Akatsuki member in the mask said. It makes sense that one of them was also a censor nin. He spoke to Hidan as if he were a child who needed very basic and obvious information. He really did talk to Hidan that way all the time. "The Kyuubi Jinchuriki is a real pain," Zetsu's white half said. "Besides being able to sense me, I found out he possesses quite the bothersome jutsu." Kakuzu asked, "You mean that chakra absorption skill?" Sasori became more interested at this point. Not much. Both Hidan and Deidara cared about it. "No, this jutsu is far more dangerous, and this single technique put an end to the previous Great Shinobi War." "You don't mean," Dark Zetsu confirmed what Sasori already thought. "Yeah, the Hiraishin." Kakuzu began to move again. He knew the Hiraishin, which is how he got out of my thread dome. But why didn't he use it more? Does it use up too much of his chakra or his power? Then his eyes got narrow. Or did he want to hold back? He knew that the Kyuubi Jinchuriki was paying full attention to him, so it wasn't a big surprise when Hidan caught him off guard. "Hold on. Hidan, you hit that Kyuubi kid with your scythe. Do you still have his blood?" Almost right away, Hidan asked, "Are you stupid?" Kakuzu wanted to kill him for that answer. "That other kid with the sand, his sand somehow cleaned my scythe clean, annoying sand bastard. I'll kill him too, next time." "Sand?" Sasori asked again. "Sabaku no Gara, then. He's the current Shukaku Jinchuriki. Killing him is out of the question too." He looked back at Sasori with anger. "I'm beginning to hate this Akatsuki business." All of them had never seen Dosu pout before. Tayuya laughed out loud at what was going on, while Gara and Tamari said they were very sorry, with a smile. Konkaru laughed again. "Well, at least you got a pass," he said. Konkaru got a mean look from Dosu with one eye. "What did you say? You want to have nightmares tonight?" He could easily leave Konkaru's bedroom with a sound power that would last for a long time. "I'll let you dream about the worst things you can think of. Sounds do have a big effect on your dreams when you're asleep." No changes were made to the threat. It only made Konkaru laugh more. He had no idea Dosu would act so petty. It was so funny. No longer smiling, Gara said, "We all passed, that's what matters." After all, he didn't laugh as easily as the other people did. His mind was still getting used to the idea. What's even better is the fact no one knows how you really fight. "So they know how you fight now?" Dosu asked with a frown that was hard to see because of his bandages. Gara always told the truth when she answered, "No, I used minimum effort." Tamari said, "I only used one simple wind jutsu." Dosu said dryly, "So no one really knows how you two fight either." Gara's previous point didn't change his mood. "The first test didn't change anything for us." He wanted to be a part of the first test, but it was over. He forgot about how upset he was. "Then I look forward to the next test. I will change my disappointment into extra vigor." Naruto spoke up out of the blue as he and Jiraiya jumped through a snowstorm to get to the land of iron. We have a small problem, Jiraiya-sama." The Toad Sage watched the show with his hand over his face and looked sideways. "My Fuin Bunshin told me that my Cage Bunshin is on his way to ask me to be a special examiner for the second Chunin exams test," he said. He scratched the back of his head nervously. "I kinda forgot about that." "So what are you saying?" "Well, before the commencement of the second test, I am supposed to meet up with the Raikage and he usually hits me once to make sure I'm not a shadow clone." Jiraiya came to a sudden realization. "Wait, you're telling me there's a chance you have to go back to Kumo? We're almost in the land of iron already?" Hee. The scratching on the back of his head kept going. "I'll be back as soon as possible. I'll just use Hiraishin to get to you. And about there being a chance I have to go back to Kumo. There's not a chance, it's really, really certain." He said sorry to Jiraiya. My shadow clone just popped due to Raikage's shoulder bash. Jiraiya had never moaned so much as he did after Naruto disappeared in a flash of yellow light. That jerk doesn't even know how dull the land of iron is, and he sends me there for no reason. He yelled into the annoying, cold, and wet snow. You owe me for this, Naruto. He did wonder why there were so many people in the office before he pulled off his own summoning, his own Hiraishin. He wasn't at all surprised to see a lot of Junin instructors, including some from Konoha, when he walked through the hole in the wall that led to the Raikage's office. This was because a had shoulder bashed the door open with his shadow clone. What's going on, brat, you're late. Kurabi laughed when Naruto got the Raikage's signature move, Iron Claw. The Konoha Junin were all shocked to see how well the Raikage and Naruto knew each other. Kakashi said in a low voice, that's strange. It's said that they raced to Suna and back, Darui told the copycat as they stood next to each other. But they won't tell us who won. Surely, he couldn't, Kakashi started to say, but stopped himself as he looked at the blonde laughing as she tried to push the Raikage off of him. That ninja is very strange, but Raikage-sama is the fastest shinobi in the land. Impersonation. Raikage stopped yelling at Naruto and looked back at the others. The next test of the Chunin exam is a race. Each individual genin group will have a chaser. You are the chasers. What do you mean by impersonation? He knew that his team had done well on the first test. He could see who else had passed by as he watched the people who were about to be chased. Some Junin were there, but Darui, Kurabi, and Mabui did not have a genin team. But Hitaki Kakashi, Yuhi Kurenai, Sarutobi Asuma, Maeda Gai, Kumo Junin Shi, 6 other Kumo Junin whose names he didn't know, a Grass Junin, and 4 Iwa Junin did. He kept getting frowns from a young woman Iwa Junin. He thought she was only a little older than him too. 3 Kiri Junin ended their time in the room. Raikage laughed. Legendary Shinobi. You are going to impersonate them and chase after a random genin team. The second test of the Chunin exams will be held in a very big forest. Only one team will enter at a time and they have 5 hours to reach the other side. One of you will enter the same forest only 5 minutes later and will do anything in your power to halt their movements. You are not to kill, only to restrict and slow down. You say not to kill, but we are allowed to fight them then? The female Junin from Iwa had a mean grin on her face. Knew the young woman and sighed. Yes, you're allowed to beat them. I expect a 3-man genin team to be wise enough to flee from a Junin. Kakashi said, but then, not all of them are 3-man teams anymore, are they? Guy agreed with this test and said, all the more reason to run away. It was a test of speed and smarts. Know when to run and how fast to run. Do you have suggestions on impersonations? Do you? I asked back. Naruto smiled and cracked his knuckles, I'll be Orochimaru. Any reason why I can only be one, though? Go ahead and do it if you think you can be more, the Raikage said with a smile. How about, Hanzo, Jiraiya, Ginkaku, Kinkaku or any of the former Kage, take your pick. The Grass Junin smiled and said, I'll be Hanzo. My fighting style is kind of the same. The big scythe on his back was clear for everyone to see. Kakashi quickly said, I'll make myself look like my father. He didn't want to see anyone else do it. She was replaced by Darui, who said, if you don't mind, I'll be the former Raikage. She unfortunately has a mission, I'll be taking his spot. Sarutobi Asuma spoke up, then I will go as my own father. The god of shinobi, or the professor. One of the Kiri Junin laughed in a strange way and said, the Nidame Mizukage. Seems like a shoe-in for me. The second Kiri Junin said, I'll be Yagura. Yuhi Kurenai put her hand to her chin. She just had to figure out how to send out genjutsu about how strong she was. I think I will be impersonating Tsunade. 2 Kumo Junin stepped up and said, we'll be Kinkaku and Kinkaku. Though it'll be hard to impersonate those maniacs. I held out his hand to the 2 Junin and said, to be honest. The muscular man pointed at Naruto and said, this blonde brat is probably the only person who can pull off a convincing imitation of those 2. Naruto made a face. Who are Kinkaku and Ginkaku? The next day. These kids are pretty quick, Darui said as he chased after 3 Konoha Genin in his Sandame Raikage henge. The Genin who worked for Uzumaki Naruto and was the only Chunin in this test who was a chaser. An interesting Chunin then. I wonder if his subordinates are telling Genin good things. He let out a sigh when he saw that the group had seen him and sped up. I was hoping for an easy break. He smiled, but his eyes were narrowed because they were moving so fast. I guess I'll have to speed up then. He ran and jumped for a while before he finally saw them off in the distance. The girl in front of them was blonde and had a big fan on her back. Some of her hair was pulled back into a ponytail in the back. A genin with red hair quickly followed behind her, and his body language was completely calm. He was jumped at the same speed as the genin next to him, who had bandages on his whole head and a gray outfit that covered most of his body. Darui looked over at the small group of people slowly, taking in as much as he could before turning to face them. Everyone knew about all the genin teams, but Darui was too lazy to really pay attention to what was being said. He didn't even know their names, even though this group had gone with them from Konoha to Kumo and back again. He could only remember big names. Genin and Chunin weren't important enough for him to remember. The girl moved the fastest, but she was probably the weakest of the three. It looked like her fan showed food and ninjutsu and maybe a summon, if the seals on it meant anything. The person with red hair moved too smoothly. His movements showed that he was a lot stronger than the genin, but this kind of shinobi often didn't pay attention to the little things when they were fighting. As an obstacle, he could probably get away with a lot. The one with the bandage looked like a pain. He was hiding too much. He could not even see his hands. If he remembered right, wasn't one of these three also a Jinchuriki? It didn't really matter, though. He fought Yugito and B and did pretty well against both of them. How in the world could a genin Jinchuriki do anything? He sped up a lot and caught up to them. He was about to kick the one with the bandage in the back, but he stopped quickly when he heard an explosion to his right. It's likely that he would be dragged into it. He saw that the genin team kept moving away from him as he stopped on a branch far to the left. They don't care about that explosion, he began, but stopped himself because he couldn't see anything to his right. Darui said to himself, well, that's surprising. They can fake sounds, he said. He turned around and decided to watch them from above. But I didn't expect to be using any ninjutsu myself, he said as a light shroud of electricity wrapped around his body. He was shocked to hear a technique coming at him as he jumped up to fly above the forest. He turned around in the air to avoid shurikens made of sand. Raiden ninjutsu, huh? Darui asked as he landed on top of a tree and looked up to see the genin with red hair floating on a sand platform. You won't be stopping my team's movements, Raiden user. It looks like he doesn't see my transformation. That's too bad. The Junin, who was pretending to be the Sandame Raikage, did take his genin opponent seriously, though. He's good because he can use sand this way. But I'm not really trying to fight him here. He did a few hand seals. Raiden, Jibashi. There were more lightning bolts around Darui before he spread his arms out. This made the electricity dance around him and Gaara. The Shukaku Jinchuriki only whispered, Suna Kyutai, because it could feel how strong Darui's jutsu was. Darui moved his arms in a way that looked like he was hugging Gaara, who was now safe in his hardened sphere of sand. To see what Darui was doing, Gaara quickly formed the Daisen no Mi, or third eye, but all it did was snarl. Darui's plan was to get past Gaara in the first place. His plan worked out. There was no such thing as a slow shinobi, but Gaara was also not the fastest. Darui had been gone for a long time, going to find the rest of his team. He wasn't scared, though. Dosu and Tamari were able to handle things on their own. A moment later, he let out a sigh as a huge gust of wind chakra ripped through the forest, cutting down trees as it came toward him. Tamari never holds back, does she? Holy shit, as Kiba spoke, Shino agreed. Even though a few miles ahead, whole trees were flying through the air. Naruto, Kurenai, and a Kumo Genin team were the last three teams to take the second test today. The bug user thought, it looks like the chaser is allowed to use ninjutsu to stop our movements. Her Byakugan couldn't see very far, so she didn't understand what was going on. Behind her team, Kurenai frowned at the show of such a strong ninjutsu. Was the person chasing going too far? Darui didn't seem like the right kind of person. Darui thought to himself, what a high-leveled Futon ninjutsu, as he dug himself out of the ground. Temari's Futon ninjutsu was weak, so the only way to avoid his attack was to go underground. They pick things up quickly, so they know each other's chakra presences. We meet again. Darui cursed his bad luck and quickly turned around to see the genin from before again. He hadn't dropped his henge, but the electricity that was dancing around him was gone. He fixed this right away. Gaara laughed at the big man in front of him. The sand clones digging themselves up all around Darui made him look a little sad. Lightning's weakness is food and, huh? My food and ninjutsu isn't as well controlled as my sister's, though. Darui fell to the ground like water all of a sudden. It was Gaara's thought that Darui had chosen to run away again. He won't let me delay his advance. He won't fight me. His only goal is to slow us down, then. The Raikage, who was really someone else, was once again getting ahead of the last two Konoha genin, leaving the slightly slower Gaara behind. This group is really good. They have 5 hours to get out of the forest, and they're almost there. It's not even been an hour yet. I need to move better than this. Ryusa Bakuryu. A huge wall of sand was coming at him and was about to eat him up. Gaara stood behind him with his arms crossed. If I have sand, I can do anything, even from a distance. You're not getting closer to my team. Darui thought it was great. This kid used a jutsu and turned it on about 500 meters ahead of him. It takes a lot of chakra control to do that. This kid isn't a genin, but doing a few hand seals. Ranten no Yoroi. Gaara's eyes got bigger when he saw the big man in front of him cover himself in black lightning. Then he threw himself through his desert avalanche without any trouble, of course, Gaara said. Raiden can go through Doden, especially lightning like that. He then spread his arms out. It was making him angry now. He's getting closer. His speed has sped up by a huge amount, and there's a strange buzzing sound coming from around his body. Dosu's keen hearing came in handy sometimes. My guess is lightning-natured chakra. He's a good opponent for you, Temari. Temari sighed and stopped on a branch of a tree. A lightning specialist, huh? Let's see him face a Fuden specialist, then, Fuden. Megamikaze. Dosu smiled behind his bandages as Temari was surrounded by dangerous wind-natured chakra that she had full control over. With her fan, she could improve either her defense or her offense. We don't want Gaara to go all out here. It seems his lightning affinity is giving Gaara a hard time. I'll wait for Gaara, and then we'll go ahead. We'll wait for you. Dosu nodded, letting them know that their chaser was getting really close, with Gaara right behind him. I'll assume you'll be using that? While Darui was still hidden, Temari nodded as he landed on the ground in front of her. Darui wasn't shocked when Gaara appeared behind Temari and joined the last genin in the back. The only thing Gaara said when he saw how Temari was, I see. He gave Dosu a nod, and then they went ahead. The lazy voice said, hey, you just switch easily like that. Darui didn't like how Temari looked, though. The one ponytail she had on was undone, and her long blonde hair was flying all over the place behind her. The Raiden chakra around him and the wind chakra around her were both very strong. I'm sorry to say this, but my Raiden is a little different, Darui said in a lazy tone. You can't assume Fuden will easily beat this one. Temari didn't pay attention to him and tightly gripped her fan. She put chakra into one of the Fuin seals on the fan and let out a yell of, Fuden, Fujikomu. Okay, that wasn't what I was expecting. The Kumo Junin looked around and realized he was really stuck. Temari had a tornado made of dangerous wind chakras around both of them. Even though Darui is weak against Fuden, this wouldn't normally be a big deal for them. And what made this even worse was that the tornado was also somehow charged with fire chakra. He didn't like the way the sounds of the very sharp wind and the very hot fire made him feel. Fuinjutsu. Temari was still in front of him, beaming. She let go of her fan with a smug grin and said, I thought there was something off about that lightning around you. With one simple move of her fan, the tornado around them whipped lightning-fast winds and fire toward Darui. So she can control this tornado from the inside. Let's test it, Darui said, focusing on his Ranten no Yoroi and using it to see what it could do to him. KKKGGHHH. He clenched his teeth because his defense did nothing to stop Temari's attack. It was clear to both Temari and Darui that it was true as it went away. Temari's mix of wind and fire was stronger than his black lightning. Temari said, That's unexpected. Darui whined a little and said, Those are my words. As he looked around at the raging tornado, he thought, Guess I won't be walking out of this one. That's the difference between you and me, his blonde opponent said, This time, she hit herself with her fan over her head. He was shocked when the fire and wind wrapped around her and pulled her out of the tornado. Outside, he could already feel Tamari moving away from him. The Junin sighed and did hand seals. You're kidding me. I can't believe I have to use this against Genin. Rantan, Funka. Darui was able to temporarily weaken Temari's powerful entrapment technique by sending out a huge amount of storm elemental chakra that would explode on contact. He stopped moving as he got out to look behind him and see that the tornado seemed to be dying down. Wait a minute, that tornado thing would only have been active for a few more moments? He took a deep breath. Wow, that was a waste of so much chakra. But then, who knew how long he would have been stuck there? When Tamari joined them again, Dosu asked, "What do we do? He's a lot stronger than I anticipated. Able to even escape your tornado entrapment jutsu." Tamari was shocked and asked, "He's already out? I guess I underestimated him." She was told by her brother, yes, he used a very powerful black lightning technique. His third eye had seen the fight, that's for sure. We can't beat him. It would reveal too much of our power. He said more. All we can do is stall. Do you want to try next, Dosu? The nin with the bandages replied, "To be honest, no, he seems to be good at long-range attacks. I could stall as it seems he's limited to non-lethal combat. But the battle wouldn't be in my favor, I would be revealing too many of my jutsu. Working together might beat him by accident," Tamari said. "Me and Gaara could stall him more, but I would have to go all out eventually and Gaara might accidentally beat him on his own." Gaara gave a bit of an uncertain shrug. "He's strong, I might even have to go Jinchuriki mode against him. I don't want to use that." "Then we run," Gaara said. Dosu looked at her with one eye. "Use Suna Bunshin and use traps, anything to slow him down. We'll run as fast as we can." "Yes. We can't afford to reveal how strong we really are," Gaara said yes. While Tamari was in the air, she turned around and saw Darui far away. "I'll start off with Kachiyose. Kirakiramai." Tamari's summon slyly murmured, "Slice in Daisen," as it headed toward Darui with a bunch of different cutting tools and wind chakra. He was happy to hear that his team had passed the test, even though they had spent most of the time running. Today was his turn, and he was going to chase a Kumo team. Shi's Genin team, to be exact. "Don't you think you're taking things a bit too far, Naruto?" Naruto was just walking through the beginning parts of the forest. He could still hear the Kumo Genin team far away. Suddenly, his voice woke him up. When he looked up, the big man was standing on what looked like a very weak tree branch. "Aren't you afraid the branch will snap, eh? Are you saying I'm heavy?" The branch broke almost right away after the shout, but the rakeage just landed in front of Naruto and 4 of his shadow clones without any fuss. The real Naruto looked just like Naruto's father, Namikaze Minato. It was made up of 2 copies, Ginkaku and Kinkaku. The Kyuubi chakra was very active around them. The last 2 were Jiraiya and Orochimaru. They were sitting next to each other with their hands on their shoulders, as if they were best friends. It seemed a little creepy to A. I had to say Naruto did a great job with the impersonations. All of them gave off strong chakra. There was a cool look on the 4th Hokage's face as he leaned against a tree with his arms folded. Spoke up, a little angry, "Your father wasn't that cool, Naruto." "Ginkaku. Kinkaku." The rakeage yelled. "They don't yell each other's names that often, Naruto." After a few more dozen screams of their names. "Who do you think you're touching, Jiraiya, Kekekeke? Wahahaha. Shut up, you snake freak, we're best friends, remember? Why would I be, with a loudmouth pervert like you, Kekekeke? Wahahaha. Who here has the pervert voice now again?" Raikage gave the arguing shadow clones, who were stuck between Orochimaru and Jiraiya, a blank look. "Those 2 might be acting. If I remember correctly, he's got the laughs right," she said. He coughed and went back to work. "Don't get carried away, Naruto, don't kill them." With that, the Yondaime Hokage disappeared in a yellow flash, followed by Ginkaku and Kinkaku in a red flash. Orochimaru slid underground, and Jiraiya called up a toad, made it swallow him, and then vanished. As he stood alone, Ace said, "Interesting. That kid's really good, and his cage bunshin seem to have minds of their own. I feel sorry for those genin." Not even a second later did he hear a scream. When Naruto finally got back to the Land of Iron, he took Jiraiya's place because he had nothing to do. The last Chunin exam test was coming up in a few days. The last test always went the same way. A playoffs. He found out that the Tsuchikage and Mizukage were going to be there to watch the Chunin exams this time. He had a thought about those two. Uriah wasn't in a good mood because he had to wait for Naruto's return for 3 days. Why did he never learn that Hiraishin in the first place? He definitely wouldn't have been sitting here in this cold country. It would have been better if they got out there faster. There were samurai to their left and right, and Mifune was sitting right in front of them at the big table. "Jiraiya-sama has informed me of why you've come before me, Naruto-san." Mifune got started. He started to say, "But I'd like you to." But Naruto broke off in a flash of yellow light. Jiraiya laughed nervously as Mifune looked right at him. "I think he just got summoned somewhere else." There were a lot of Kiri Anbu hunter nin around Haku and Zabuza when Naruto showed up right where Haku had thrown his signature kunai. While looking at the Kiri Hite 8, Naruto said, "Well, shit. It seems, to avoid war, I'll have to kill all of you." Haku and Zabuza were scared as Naruto let out a killer intent that he had been holding back for months. This boy thinks that in order to protect everyone and everything, he also has to be able to destroy everyone and everything. Haku was in a state that he didn't think was possible again after seeing her mentor, Zabuza, kill many groups in front of him, just like Naruto had done. But it wasn't the same. He saw that Zabuza was shocked too, because he looked at her sideways. But shocked was a better word. The breathing was soft and quick for both of them. It wasn't being tired that made them do this, it was fear. Naruto looked over his shoulder at the two people and asked, "Are you guys okay?" "Yeah, kid," Zabuza said, barely able to speak after seeing the short massacre. He made fun of her by saying, "You didn't hold back, huh?" Naruto's answer was very surprising. "I did. If I hadn't, I probably would have taken the two of you down by accident as well." They were fighting the hunter nin on a lake near water country when they used kunai to call Naruto. Now the lake was a bright red color, and the only sign of the hunters were some severed hands floating in the water. Once Haku found one, he watched it go under the water. What a horror, it's hard to believe that such a good boy could unleash such destructive power. Not being happy with the situation, Naruto said, "I couldn't afford to let any of them escape." Hunter nin from Kiri. "I wore my Hite 8, so if even one of them escaped, it would have meant trouble for Konoha." Zabuza could only think of one thing to say. No one got away. Standing on a lake of blood didn't hurt the demon of the mist too much, but he still wasn't sure if he was okay. Haku's voice came back a few seconds later. "Naruto-kun, are you okay?" Naruto spoke in a harsh voice, "I'm fine. I won't let anyone hurt my allies. Please don't be afraid to call me again if you ever need help." He paused and looked around at them and his surroundings. "I had to go back because I was in the middle of a meeting. I might need your help again." He smiled at them as if he hadn't just killed 2 squadrons of Kiri hunter nin. There was a yellow flash, and he was gone. "But that'll be when I'm Hokage. Be careful, you two." The man named Zabuza let out a breath he had been holding. Haku did a lot of the same things. That was a surprise. "We were saved, but it hurts so much," were the young man's thoughts. As Zabuza went to get the kunai Haku had thrown, he thought, "I should think twice before using that kunai again. That kid's as crazy as they come, Haku." "Not crazy. It's almost like he's overdetermined, if that even exists," Haku said in a low voice when he was finally able to move. His stern voice almost made his guards draw their swords when he said, "That's impossible. No one could be in the vault with that sword," Mifune told Naruto with a hard look. Then he got up from his seat and walked over to the blonde without a word. He asked as he got a better look at Naruto's sword in his right hand, "Does it go away when you stop touching it?" When he saw the blonde nod, his next question was, "Does it only react to your touch? Show me." The ego kaiki went away as soon as Naruto raised his right hand, so Mifune agreed. He had seen enough proof. He said, "That wasn't henge. That is the real ego kaiki," Mifune said as he stared at Naruto again. He then sent a message to his guards, who punched Naruto in the neck. "With this weapon in your hands, It looks like you broke into our vault, Mifune said. Naruto turned around and gave Mifune a hard look. But for you to able wield it, you have to have the same blood as Namikaze Minato, the one who helped create the Ego Kaiki. Tell me who you really are, child. Naruto began. I didn't break into your vault, Mifune-sama. But your assumptions are correct. I am Namikaze Minato's son. It was said by the old samurai. I never knew he had a son. The guard's swords were still around his neck. Madden ninjutsu, huh? It's becoming a rather scary world with possibilities like this. When Jiraiya suddenly spoke, he took his hands off of his face. So, you figured it out. You think it's possible? I didn't think it was possible to copy the ability of a sword, but Minato-sama has shown me differently when he copied one of the swords of the 7 swordsmen of the mist with his Ego Kaiki. Mifune went back to Naruto. A lot of things considered impossible are made possible by Fuinjutsu. Am I right if I say you are talented in Fuinjutsu? The blades were too close for Naruto to tilt his head. He chose to shrug instead. I'm catching up to Jiraiya-sama. He waved his head to free Naruto from the blades and said, that means yes, child. The guards easily followed through. Come with me. Your claims from before seem far-fetched no longer. Naruto and Jiraiya spoke in a low voice as they followed Mifune and his guards. Minato Namikaze-sama has told me of the possibility of your arrival long ago, Naruto-san. It was why, even if you had broken into our vault, I wouldn't have cared anyway. For you see, our vault is actually your father's. I hold the key to it, but so do you. Or rather, so does your blood. But now you've got an old man really excited, Mifune said with a smile. Your request is to watch what happens when 2 of the same sword clash with one another. When they got close to a big gate, Jiraiya could feel how excited Mifune and Naruto were. Namikaze Minato once asked himself and me the same thing. The Chunin exams, yeah? Sasori turned his puppet body around as Zetsu gave Deidara a single nod. It is pointless at the moment, then. There will be at least 2 Kage in Kumogakure. We will wait. One of the people following Jashin yelled, why do we have to wait? It just means more sacrifices for Jashin-sama. What good are 2 Kage against us, huh? Huh? He glared at his partner and said, shut up, Hidan. The current Raikage isn't a man to be taken lightly. This kid is right, we need to wait, Kakuzu said. He was the oldest and called everyone a kid. It wasn't a surprise that he called Sasori a kid. He put some clay on his right hand and said, HMPH, doesn't hurt to do some recon, huh? That's not necessary, Deidara-senpai, Zetsu said. I'm already inside. After all, the plant-like man thought, his clay might just blow up. So, who's fighting who? The rest of Naruto's team was in the living room watching TV while he cooked dinner. He had just come back from the Land of Iron in the late afternoon, and he and old man Mifune had a lot to talk about what they had found. Any way you look at it, that old samurai was now his friend. It did make Naruto think about how strong Mifune was. The man might be able to teach him Kenjutsu. It's not the same as in Konoha, Kankuro said as he worked on a metal dog puppet. They're going to fight shinobi at the Junin level. Each genin has a chance to show the judges what they can do. Kankuro wasn't actually competing, though. Yeah, I know. I guess it considers me Junin level because I'm going to be one of them. Naruto made a joke. But don't you already know who your opponents are? Gaara then spoke up. The frown on his face showed that he was losing at chess against Dosu. No. Tamari replied, they'll just flash out names. He was sitting by the window and watching the people walk by. I kinda feel sorry for the guy facing you, though. When Tayuya joined Naruto in the kitchen, she said, these Chunin exams sound really boring to me. She was lying on the couch before and sometimes looked over at Gaara and Dosu's chess game with their pieces. She would quickly clean the floor with both of them. Where have you been these last few days, anyway? It was fucking boring doing those lame missions with the puppeteer. He smiled at the girl with red hair and said, I was busy. But my Fuin Bunshin are always around you. When my Fuin Bunshin dispel, I get their experience and their memories, so all you have to do is ask them where they are. Are you stupid? Remember that I can't see your Fuin Bunshin? Tayuya stuck her finger in one of the pans Naruto was using to cook something. Naruto saw that Tayuya didn't like it because her face was very sour. Like I said, they're always around you. All you have to do is whisper. What? Kankaru smiled when Tamari walked into the kitchen and sat down next to Tayuya. The two girls had yelled, "What? Pervert. Hey, Captain makes mistakes too, right?" Kankaru was surprised to see that Dosu was laughing too. Gaara was too interested in the game of chess. When the wind chakra was wrapped around Temari's feet, she could jump higher and even float for a short time. The person she was fighting ran at her as soon as she landed. What? Why is there no signal to start or announcement of the battle? She knew why they did what they did, though. They tried to make this test look like the real thing. During a real battle, there were no alerts, signals, or warnings. With a smirk, Tamari swung her fan diagonally, making a decent tornado around herself to get some space between herself and her opponent. The person she was up against was the same Junin who had been after her team in the second test. She thought his name was Darui. The dark-skinned man do a few complicated hand seals and then put both hands in front of his face. You're quick on your feet. Rantan, Laser Circus. Besides Naruto, Tamari was the fastest member of her team. She quickly skidded back and forth to avoid the many lightning-based beams that were coming at her. She saw that Darui had control over them, and she knew that the lightning in this jutsu wasn't just regular lightning. No, this jutsu had that Rantan element that could counter even her wind-fire combo. She had to pay very close attention. Then she moved quickly to get behind Darui and slammed her fan right into him. But she wasn't as fast as a Shunshin, so Darui was able to easily avoid the attack and stop his own laser circus in the process. Darui said in a low voice, "You're really quick for a genin. I'm sorry, but I want to see how fast you can move." All of a sudden, lightning struck him, and he ran toward the woman. To his surprise, Darui saw right away that Tamari was stronger than him because her body was filled with wind-natured chakra. That's why Darui's taijutsu wasn't lightning taijutsu but just normal taijutsu. The Junin was being pushed back by Tamari in her wind goddess mode. As Darui barely avoided a fan's kick and strike, he said, "I know enough." He took a step back and was glad to see that he was still faster than the genin. That's silly. She's too strong to be a genin. Are all genin from Konoha like this? Still, that jutsu must be draining her chakra. Darui gave his opponent a blank look and then sealed his hands together. Sweden, Gekuru no Jutsu. Darui had full control over this jutsu, just like he did with his other one. From Darui's mouth came a strong stream of water that moved very quickly toward Tamari. Darui quickly sealed with one hand and added lightning to the water technique to see what Tamari would do next. What if she used a Shunshin? Darui was fast enough with this move to hurt her behind him. She didn't use Shunshin, though. At that moment, Darui realized he was still facing a genin. It's possible she wasn't ready to do the Shunshin yet. She fully opened her fan and swung it around. Fuuten, Kusoku no Jutsu. As he watched the wind-natured chakra fly from her fan and surround his jutsu, trapping it in an air bubble like the water prison jutsu, Darui had to hold back an angry growl. Unlike you, I don't have my hands occupied holding a jutsu. As Tamari jumped for Darui, he quickly took off his jutsu. As soon as he let go of his own jutsu, both of them became hers completely. Darui watched as his own jutsu and Temari's wind restraint technique used together would meet him right where he had dodged Temari's attack. Darui scowled and said, "Rantan no Yoroi." He didn't think he would use this defense against a single genin. He had no trouble getting through Temari's counter with this armor on. "I suggest you pick up the pace now, genin. I'm done holding back." Tamari gave him a smirk. As she said, "What a coincidence." She held her fan in her left hand and poured chakra into the Fuin seal with her right. Kachiyose. The Kumo Junin noticed that things were about to get tougher. Tamari now had two big fans in her hands, and both of them were wide open. "I'm also done with the warm-up." Fuuten Hijutsu. Yakushin. Darui was shocked when Tamari began dancing in circles with her fans still wide open. Storms made of fire and wind crashed into each other, fused, and danced around them in a way that was a lot like Tamari. Then they kept attacking him, with some merging into bigger tornadoes and others shrinking down when they got close to Junin, who was dodging them. It wasn't easy for Darui to avoid the jutsu, but he was an elite Junin for a reason. If he did get hit, his armor would have stopped almost all of the damage. The blonde genin, on the other hand, was hard to talk to. It looked like the stronger tornadoes, the ones that were mixed with both wind and fire, were keeping her safe. After all, those tornadoes were strong enough to fight him. Then how long can she keep this up? What is going on? Darui wondered as he repeated a few hand seals from before and tried to avoid small tornadoes. Rantan, Laser Circus. Tamari was relieved to see that her tornadoes blocked all of his laser beams. The bad news was that they took away all of her defense. Tornadoes in the area quickly joined together and became her new defense. His jutsu can cancel out mine, and vice versa. Tamari quickly figured this out and knew Darui had known this earlier because she had seen him do the same hand seals. Tamari thought, he's too fast for my jutsu. She was now focusing more on her own defense. I guess a Junin is still too much for me to handle. It was easy for her to control her Yakushin jutsu, so she could do a few more hand seals. Fuuten, Renkuden. The jutsu she used was meant to make Darui move back. She couldn't do the move because she had to fold up one of her fans and strap it to her back. Tamari said in a low voice, "You're strong," as she reached for her second fan. But Darui put out a hand. "Okay, there's a time limit for the matches. You can't go back down to your team to stop me from telling them this," Darui said, looking at where the three Kage were sitting and watching the matches. "About a week from now, you'll find out how well you did here. You can rest there and watch the rest of the genin fight." The blonde followed Darui's point and found a small lounge just below the balcony where the Kage were sitting. Tamari sent one of her fans back to her scroll and put the other one on her back while saying, "I see. Thank you for the match." Darui went after her and said, "Yeah, I'm also supposed to wait there." "That she was from Sanagakure, right?" "Eh, the Reikage?" asked she, one of his best Junin. The next genin contestant was shown on a scroll that made a guy was opening in the arena. That brat already has some pretty strong followers. The new Mizukage sat next to the Reikage. Her long auburn hair covered most of her cleavage, but not all of it. Not much was known about what was going on in Kiri, but it looked like things had calmed down enough for the Kage to leave the village. Ao, a powerful Kiri Junin, and Chojuro, one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, were on either side of her. There was Jiraiya leaning against the wall next to the 2 Kage. He had a smile that had never been seen before. He was, of course, writing things down in a notepad and looking in a certain direction from time to time. Something strange happened as the 2 Kage watched Guy finally figure out what the scroll in his hands meant. One person appeared in front of the Kage after the air swirled. He just showed up in front of them and spoke out loud. "Shinra Tensai." He told the other Akatsuki members in a calm voice, "I have already sent Nagato to several places. I will get you into Kumo as well. Our main goal at the moment is to put a scar on the planet. All will know where Kumo once lay." Tobi asked Deidara. "You will attack from the sky. When I yell, you can level it to the ground. We don't need to hurt our own." Deidara took off into the sky with a grin that would make you crazy. "Kakuzu, do not split yourself up, it makes you too vulnerable in a village." The explosion you just heard was Nagato's Diva Path. The Reikage, Mizukage and Jiraiya should be horribly wounded. Your task is to finish them off. Before they paid attention again, Sasori and Hidan saw Tobi use his strange way of getting around on Kakuzu. "Hidan, kill everyone." Hidan tried not to laugh so hard that he looked crazy, but Tobi teleported him away. "Sasori, your job is to try and capture only one Jinchuriki. The Ichibi no Shukaku, Sabaku no Gara. Use whatever means necessary." He looked at a tall tree far away as he teleported the last person there away. "Now for Nagato and Konan to give you more instructions." Holy, he let go of the needle that was stuck in his mouth. Genma finally spoke up. "Is it bad that I'm kind of glad Hokage-sama isn't here?" The Kage were sitting on a balcony that was no longer there. A shinobi with orange hair and an Akatsuki cloak was the only one who seemed to float above the flying things. Kakashi quickly showed Genma his Sharingan eye and said, "No time for jokes. That guy isn't like other shinobi," he told his fellow Junin. That explosion was all chakra. Everyone with a genin squad should go to their position. The others should help out wherever needed. Although we have no alliance with Kumo or Kiri, Konoha will show them we are reliable shinobi. Kakuzu could only see one of his targets. He should be in the right place since Tobi sent him here. Did everyone else die already? The Raikage had a hard time getting up because he was bleeding heavily from many places on his body. Raikage, right? You look weaker than your predecessors. Kakuzu didn't have time to react because the hurt cage in front of him was smashed into the ground by someone who appeared behind him. But it was shocked when Kakuzu kicked him hard in the ribs. As he hit the lightning leader, the Akatsuki member made fun of him by saying, "What a pussy punch. You're Raiden specialized, right? Catch, oh powerful cage, Fuuten, Atsugai." Again, a disappeared and then showed up above Kakuzu. His wind blast had been ignored without a thought. Guillotine drop. Shit. Oh no, not even my armory jutsu is strong enough for that. The blow wasn't very hard, though. Kakuzu quickly kicked the big man off of him, happy that his metal skin had saved him again. Afterward, he looked at the sword that was stuck in the ground next to him. "You should thank Samahata, old man." Akatsuki. Right after the explosion, Naruto flew after Jiraiya and teleported him to Temari, who was the only person in his squad who knew how to use medic jutsu. "You managed to find him during that explosion?" As Temari healed Jiraiya, Naruto looked up at the only other Junin nearby. "Darui, right? Raikage-sama is currently fighting two members of the Akatsuki. She is on his way to him. You'd better help out, too. They're strong. Hoshigaki Kisame and Kakuzu." With a nod to the blonde, Darui immediately said Shunshin off. He went back to Temari and Jiraiya. "You alright, old man?" Jiraiya laughed and said, "Shut up, little brat. I've been hit by bigger things," he said. Temari was already done healing him. "I see Kakashi has gathered all the Junin with their squads and brought them to safety. It's unnecessary for Konoha to get involved." Naruto's cold answer was, "You're wrong. Someone is going to where Gaara and the others are. I think they have their sights set on him." For a moment, his cold, blue eyes were on Jiraiya. He then pointed up and said, "Let's help Kumogakure, Jiraiya-sama. That guy is also very annoying." Jiraiya looked up and saw a strange bird and things falling from the sky that looked like bombs. "Someone who can fly, huh? Toads eat flies, you know." Mizukage-sama, Ao and Chojuro were crawling toward their leader, who had been killed. "Are you alright, Mizukage-sama?" Terumi Mei got up from the ground and looked at her workers. "I am. You two, however, seem to be in bad shape. I suggest you three go back to Kirigakure." All three of them turned to look at the voice. When she looked at the blonde in front of her, Mei said, "I didn't feel this boy." Naruto spoke calmly as he looked around to see if anyone was getting closer. Kumogakure is under attack, and shinobi from Konohagakure are helping to defend it. There's no need for Kirigakure to get involved. They should leave, he told them. The raspy voice of Ao asked as he stood up, "Who are you?" He was really hurt by that attack. "Don't think you can order Mizukage-sama around, you." Mei stopped him. "It's all right, Ao. Although I wouldn't mind you introducing yourself, Konoha Nin. It's Uzumaki Naruto. You were attacked by Akatsuki, you aren't what they're after." Uzumaki. The blonde boy made Mei's eyes narrow a little. "I am Mizukage, boy. You think I won't retaliate after being attacked too ruthlessly? Any other shinobi would have died from an attack like that." He then pointed west and said, "Suit yourself. The Raikage is fighting off two Akatsuki members that way. Perhaps he could use some assistance?" Mei meant to answer, but she couldn't because Naruto was gone, leaving behind no chakra or smoke. "What is jutsu?" She looked at Ao. "Use your Byakugan. Where did he go?" The Kiri Junin was already shaking his head. "I was already using my Byakugan, Mizukage-sama. He simply vanished." "That means Madan ninjutsu. For a kid like that?" Mei clenched her hands together. "Konoha has young shinobi with that much talent?" She turned her attention away from the interesting subject and back to Ao and Chojuro. "Is it true? Is the Raikage fighting someone?" Ao immediately agreed. The boy wasn't lying. The Raikage also seems to be losing. Akumo Junin is on his way as well, but they are strong. One of them is Hoshigaki Kisame. It looked like Mei was hungry for blood. Time to cut off a loose end, then. While they were waiting for their match, the genin who were looking up were shocked to see explosions above them. It looked like Kumo was being attacked. The person landing in front of them was seen by all of them, though. The strange thing said, "It looks like Deidara is useful for something." It was Gaara, Naruto's Kage Bunshin, and all the other genin who were there. They all looked at the strange big person crouching in front of them and asked, "Who are you?" "Akatsuki, right?" Kage Bunshin next to Gaara said in a whisper, "Wait for a moment. The real me will be here soon. I am Akasuna no Sasori. Come with me willingly and no harm will come to you or the others. Resist and everyone in this room will die except for you, Sabaku no Gaara." Sasori was impressed when a wall of sand suddenly rose from the ground behind Gaara, blocking everyone else except for him. Gaara, Naruto's shadow clone, and Dosu. "It looks like you don't get it. You're the one who will die here." Gaara quickly closed the hole in the ceiling, making the room they were in much darker. Dosu laughed. "Don't think too lowly of us now, puppeteer. I can hear the real you inside of that puppet." "Who? That's interesting." The puppet moved a little and its tail swished behind it. "You don't seem too worried. Surely, you know who I am?" Gaara sighed and looked at Dosu in a deep way. A Kugutsu user doesn't stand a chance against a Jinchuriki. "Akasuna no Sasori, you're a legendary shinobi from Suna, but, so am I." Dosu got Gaara's message and began taking off his bandages. A shinobi unsure of his surroundings will be a dead shinobi. He didn't say anything behind the two. He would watch out for his friends and make sure nothing bad happened. Kakashi. The Junin with the Sharingan kept an eye on everything going on around him as Naruto walked up to him. The three of them stood next to Kakashi. The hole in the ground where the genin would jump out had been closed off. "I can use Raiden to go underneath. Is this Gaara's doing?" The blonde said, "Yes. Yes. They are facing a member of the Akatsuki. He didn't want anyone interfering. I'll help out by usage of Hiraishin. There's no need to open the ground only for Gaara to face more danger. The genin down there are safe, but you should be able to get to them." Naruto pointed a few feet ahead. Gaara separated them from himself. "Right there is where you can use Raiden and get the genin to safety." In the back of his mind, the blonde wondered if he could use Akatsuki's chaos to help Kakashi and the other Junin finish the mission the Hokage had given them. The getting back of Hyuga Hizashi. But first he had to make sure that all of his friends were safe. "Go. I'll help Gaara, you help the genin." Kakashi said, "Yes," and turned on his Reikiri. He told the other Konoha Junin, "Follow me." Naruto hadn't heard from his Kage Bunshin yet, so it's likely that they were already taking care of Sasori. While he looked around the battlefield, he felt someone he knew coming closer. There was a nod from the blonde. Maybe they could use another powerhouse. "Yo, Karabi." Pain's Diva Path didn't seem to want to pay attention to the blonde when the real Naruto showed up in front of it. A Chunin like yourself should know better than to pick a losing battle. Get out of the way or I'll make you disappear. But Naruto just grinned at his enemy, looking at them with eyes that looked like toads. Kage Bunshin. Diva Path looked around at all the chaos around Kumo and didn't even seem to mind that Naruto's single Kage Bunshin was coming at him. Someone else with orange hair jumped in front of Diva Path and used a huge axe to cut the shadow clone in half, getting rid of it. The real Naruto replied with a deadpan, "Your arm can change into an axe." He was now facing two members of the Akatsuki. The new guy had no hair, and his body was still changing. Naruto didn't like seeing something shoot out of the man's shoulder at him. Then a huge number of rockets came out. What the? All of them were easy for Naruto to avoid, but that didn't stop the rockets from flying around and hurting buildings and other shinobi. He threw more than 50 kunai at the two people in front of him and said, "Fine." But they all missed. He called up his sword, the Eigo Kaiki, by pouring chakra into his palm. "Akatsuki, you're going down." After that, he flashed around the two of them and killed the gunner with his Eigo Kaiki. Diva Path watched with interest as a Chunin moved so fast that it hurt his eyes. It could have interested him, but he didn't like it. Shinra Tensai. All of the kunai he had spread out around them were destroyed by a huge blow. Naruto was also thrown away. He crashed through a wall and wanted to cough up dust, but the man with orange hair was following him, so he had to roll to the side. He landed and saw a strange black rod go through the ground. Then he used Hiraishin to teleport to one of his kunai. He looked around and saw that he had landed near the man he had killed. The Shinra Tensai that hit him had not yet called up his Eigo Kaiki. A powerful blast that blows everything away around him, huh? When the Hachibi Jinchuriki came up to him, Naruto looked relieved and said, "Hey, yo. Kurabi. Nice. I was just fighting off someone really strong." "Where he hid, this stupid brat. You do pretty well for a chunin," Naruto said. Kurabi and Naruto both looked up and saw Diva Path floating above them. They looked at Kurabi and said, "Too good to not get rid of." It was Rinnegan of Diva Path who said, "And you're Hachibi." Suddenly, 4 other Akatsuki members with orange hair landed on the roof across from them. "You're in the way of my plan." Naruto looked just a little confused. "Do you two know each other?" asked the blonde. He made sure he was ready to use Hirishin to protect everyone he cared about. Until then, he could wait and learn more about his opponents. "Naruto, this is no time for jokes, these be serious folks." Sasori was getting mad. Fighting underground didn't leave much room to move around. He needed space because he was a puppeteer. He couldn't call up 100 puppets here without limiting their movements. The skills of Hiriko's 2 opponents made it easy for them to beat him. This was all the blonde in the back had seen so far. He grinned and said, "You seem pretty ready. I guess you leave me no choice but to use lethal jutsu." Gaara's eyes got really big when Sasori called up a puppet that he knew right away. "Say hello, Sabaku no Gaara, to your grandfather. Sandame, K's cage." "What? How? I can turn people into puppets. I call it Hitokugitsu. The 3rd K's cage has become my weapon, and he still has all of his abilities." To show it off, Sasori had the 3rd use his iron sand to create a medium-sized Suna symbol in the air. After that, he broke the symbol and threw it at his opponents. Best to dodge, children, as the poison inside is very deadly. His iron sand didn't hit anything, though. In fact, it was gone. It hadn't even evaporated yet. Sasori was shocked. "What? That seemed a little too risky," said the blonde in the back. She finally started to walk toward Gaara and Dosu and joined them. "I sealed away that dangerous stuff." "Fuinjutsu, space-time barrier?" Sasori asked, since that was the only thing that could have happened. He asked, "Who are you?" He looked around to see if the iron sand was still nearby, but it wasn't. "Where did you send it?" He had iron sand available, but he had already used a lot of it. Sasori growled. It wasn't smart to fight someone who used Fuinjutsu, especially one who could do a space-time barrier so quickly. Even though he knew some Fuinjutsu, he couldn't do this. The odds were against him. A puppeteer and someone who used Fuinjutsu didn't go well together. A person who was very good at Fuinjutsu was a bad match for anyone. "That's right, Gaara, I'm also a Jinchuriki. You, on the other hand, are an Akatsuki, and you want the Biju inside us." He put his hand to his stomach. "You won't get them. I will destroy Akatsuki." "Is that Uzumaki? I didn't think I'd have to deal with one of them again." With this much Fuinjutsu skill at such a young age, this person seems like a wonder. "Fret not, Sasori." The man who looked like a puppet turned his head a little to see Itachi show up out of nowhere. Sasori thought Itachi might know about Madan Ninjutsu because of this. "We seem to be facing off against quite the youngsters, Itachi. One of them is just a Kage Bunshin, and I've already beaten these 2, Itachi said calmly, his hands still in his pockets. "Naruto-kun, we are here for Gaara-kun now." He used his Mangekyo Sharingan, and the Konoha nin were smart enough not to look at it. "Surely, you don't want to repeat?" He knew something was wrong when he heard someone yell, "Kachiyose," and saw a huge cloud of smoke rise above the village. He wasn't expecting to be dodging tongue attacks from a huge toad right after that, though. "Damn this. My explosions can't even hurt the toad." Deidara yelled as she hacked through the air, but Gamabunta just looked like he was having a good time. "If this goes on, I'll go ahead and skip to the finale. To hell with the plan, then, yeah." Deidara laughed hysterically as the bird he was riding was caught and he started to fall. "Fuck this, I'll use C3. Toby, who was in the background watching everything, saw this and cursed, "Shit." As they fought off Kisame and Kakuzu, the Raikage and the Mizukage were getting a little tired. Mei said, "They're stronger than I thought." It's likely that she could have beaten Kisame on her own, but Kakuzu was just as strong. The Raikage yelled, "Why didn't you bring a medic?" His body was still bleeding badly. Behind them, Darui was still in first place, but he was wary and knew he was beat. Ao was the same as Darui next to him. Both were just waiting for things to open up. Early on, Kisame knocked out Chojuro because he was angry to see someone with a legendary sword like the one he had. He almost killed the boy before the Mizukage stepped in. Mei replied angrily, "This is hardly the time to complain." It made her very mad that Kisame had killed Chojuro in that way. The boy was dying while they were still alive. Out of nowhere, a man in a mask showed up behind Kisame and Kakuzu. Scatter. Deidara's gone mad. Both Kakuzu and Kisame let out sighs and quickly turned tail. Both the Reikage and the Mizukage looked at each other and then quickly turned to their subordinates. "Let's go back," Ao called out as he picked up the hurt Chojuro. Before they could all look up, a blinding flash told them something very bad. Itachi, when Tobi walked in out of the blue, both Sasori and Itachi turned around. As Tobi led them away from the fight below, all they could say was, "I see." Gaara asked Dosu, "I wonder what that meant." As he ran toward Gaara and Dosu, Naruto looked very scared. "Summon them. Losing them over something as fickle as this would be stupid, damn that Deidara." When Nagato told Konan to use the Kachiyose no Jutsu, she did so and called all of Nagato's paths to the big tree they had built. Jiraiya's eyes got really big when Deidara's bomb went off in the middle of Kumogakure from above. While he was far away, Reikage had to use all of his chakra to protect himself from the explosion. In a way that was similar, the Mizukage put up a lava dome around herself and anyone else who was close enough. He used Hiraishin to get his soldiers to a safe place, but he wasn't sure if he could get to all of them in time. He needed Tsunade more than anything else. The explosion destroyed almost all of Kumogakure. Tobi turned his head away from the people standing in front of him. He said with a little anger, "Sabaku no Gaara is no longer in Kumogakure. I assume he is now well protected within the walls of Konoha, thanks to Uzumaki Naruto's Hiraishin no Jutsu. Capturing the Jinchuriki seems to be harder than I anticipated." Naruto Uzumaki said, "Uzumaki Naruto is only a chunin. He is not a threat." Nagato rolled into the room where the Akatsuki members were. "I fought him and he barely touched me. He might be a chunin, but his jutsu are way above what a chunin should have. I think we should start with the Kyuubi." Akatsuki's puppeteer was standing while everyone else was sitting. He wasn't supposed to sit, after all. Sasori might be right, but the Kyuubi Jinchuriki is smart, Tobi said as he took off his mask and showed everyone his face. Kisame knew who he was and smiled. "I believe it's time you all know what the real goal of this organization is." His fists tightened. Uzumaki Naruto has become a major hindrance. "Wait a minute. Where is Hidan?" Kisame asked out of the blue, "Did you forget?" He sighed and put his mask on the table in the middle of them. "Of course I didn't, Kisame. Hidan survives everything. That explosion was nothing to him. Right now, Kumogakure is too dangerous. Killer Bee is in full Biju mode and the Reikage is very angry. To top that off, Uzumaki Naruto managed to bring Tsunade to Kumo and she is currently patching up the populace by usage of her summon, Katsuyu. I'll wait until things simmer down to fetch the mess that is Hidan." Deidara is on his way back and managed to escape from Jiraiya. He saw Nagato. "I believe you should set him straight, he is a very unreliable member." He shrugged and said, "I'll pair him up with Itachi." Itachi didn't look as amused for a moment as Kisame, who was laughing. Before he turned to Obito, Nagato said, "But at least Kumogakure has been leveled to the ground. The world now knows Akatsuki. Now, perhaps it's time you introduce yourself to the others?" "Yes, I am Uchiha Obito, and you will all follow my lead. 2 months of TIMESKIP. Kage Henge no Jutsu. Latent ability. Why do you ask?" Naruto was reading the blood scroll that his past self had given him. He was good at everything, so there wasn't much to understand. Reading what Naruto from the future had written made him understand right away, and he felt stupid for not knowing about it sooner. The second test of the Kumo Chunin exams made him think about the jutsu he hadn't tried out fully yet. After all, it could turn into a fighting style on its own. He had Toad mode and Jinchuriki mode, so he could call this Army mode. But to master this jutsu, right on time, someone knocked on the door of this temporary apartment. "Come in, Anko Senpai." He moved out of the way as Anko walked into the small hallway that led to the living room. The others? They're in the other apartment, we're all alone here. Junin, who had purple hair, winked at him and went into the living room. These couches aren't big enough for the both us, though. The blonde Shunin stopped for a moment because he was feeling very serious. He didn't know this Anko very well yet, so he asked, "Huh? What do you mean?" He only knew she was crazy. He didn't think she'd be this way, though. She just gave him an evil grin and sat down on the bigger couch, saying, "You heard me." A moment later, she chose to lie down instead. "So, what was it you wanted to talk about?" Naruto honestly replied, "Bingo book. I already asked Kakashi-sensei a lot about it. I'm a Chunin, so I'm not permitted to have one in my possession. Sensei told me you know a lot about the shinobi in the bingo book, so..." "What, you want me to give you biographies? That would be too boring and talk too much. That would be too much talking for even made a guy." Anko laughed as she sat down on the couch, and Naruto moved to the other couch. "I'd still want it, though." When the special Junin looked at the blonde with mischievous eyes, she said, "You're a boring date, kid." He didn't get what she meant. She went on with a sigh. "What's in it for me? You want something in return?" The Junin got up and rolled her eyes at him. Her stern look turned into a seductive one as she said, "You should know by now that nothing comes for free, especially information. Don't you know what I want, Naruto-kun?" As a shinobi who never knows what to do, Naruto gave Anko serious thought. "No, I don't. How about equipment, kunai?" It made her laugh to see him frown when she told him, "You're stupid. I'll tell you about every shinobi I know if you tell me what you want to hear." "But we spar seriously." She paused for the first time to think about the strange request. "What do you want to know, anyway?" "Their character, jutsu and fighting styles. Don't even bother telling me anything about anyone if you don't know all three." Most of Kumogakure was still in shambles, but a lot of buildings had been fixed up. Even though Tsunade did a lot, the village was still in mourning and many people had died. "Konoha shinobi, I thanked the others for their help before they left a week ago, and I will do the same for you," the Raikage said in a voice that sounded almost reluctant, frowning at the blonde captain of the Konoha Genin team. An Asura named Jiraiya was leaning against the wall behind the team. He had also chosen to stay behind. He yelled, "Don't worry about it, old man. These Chunin exams would have been boring without my interference." Mabui got angry with the blonde and hit him on the head once. "Respect, Naruto-kun. Leave the idiot alone. He's hopeless." The big man had just broken his own table in half before he spoke. "Since Jiraiya-sama is going back to Konoha with you all, I'm sure you'll be fine by yourself." This meant that he didn't want to send a Kumo team with them to protect them on their way to Konoha. "Unless you want someone to come with you?" he asked Naruto with a smile. The blonde Konoha Chunin looked really lost. "I have no idea what you're talking about, old geezer. We'll be fine." The door to his office opened all of a sudden, and the blonde Samui walked in. She looked around at everyone before bowed once to the Raikage. "You've requested my presence, Raikage-sama?" "No, Naruto did." "What?" After laughing at Naruto's outburst, the Raikage returned to his calm state. He looked at Samui's always neutral face and said, "You're a pretty stupid shinobi, kid. You two are somewhat similar in certain fields, but anyway, if you need it, Samui's team can escort you back to Konoha." Jiraiya's voice came out of nowhere and said, "That won't be necessary. We've received a mission from the Hokage. Our next stop is not Konoha." "I see. That's too bad," Naruto said. He didn't know why he felt like glaring at A's smile instead of being confused by it. "Then by all means, leave. Samui's team will see you off at the gates." Everybody in the office felt sad when Naruto bowed formally in front of the leader and said, "Raikage-sama. I'm sorry I couldn't stop what happened." He looked up and saw that A was not showing any emotion at all. "Please consider my offer." A smiled and put out his hand, saying, "You'll hear from me, Naruto." Naruto shook it right away. "Thank you for what you did, we will not forget." Powerful shinobi are often unconventional people. "Is that so?" Dosu asked out loud as the rest of Team Unsen followed Samui, Karui, and Omoi. "That's easy," said the blonde fan in the group as she walked in sync with Dosu. "The power gets to their heads and their brains can't handle it. Look at Naruto and Jiraiya." Dosu's neutral expression seemed to match the pair of arguing people walking closest to Samui's team. Temari's youngest brother spoke out of the blue. They've gotten closer. Something happened between them. Gaara fought the urge to destroy the two metal puppets walking to Kankuru's left and right. There is trust between them now, like between Naruto and me. The one to Kankuru's right was too close for his taste. They also made too much noise. They look a lot alike, too, Tayuya said as she walked on the other side of Gaara. Loud and annoying. Bandaged Nin looked over his shoulder to see what Gaara was talking about when he said, Dosu. Your specialty is sound. It is in Kankuru's best interest you learn how to keep his dolls quiet. The former Otto Nin thought about it. It will take away my constant chakra. The best way is to teach Uzumaki Taiko Kankuru silencing Fuinjutsu. He is the only one I know who can do that. Gaara looked at Naruto right away. Uzumaki Taiko. Kankuru either didn't notice any of them or was too busy controlling the heavy puppets. Here. Samui looked at the strange set of kunai that Naruto gave her and then stared at him. Why do I need these? Jiraiya and the rest of Naruto's team had already started to leave. It was time for Naruto to say goodbye to Samui's group. One's for you, the other two are for Kurabi and Yugito. This summons me when you throw it, kind of. The Hiraishin. Omoi whispered in shock. He couldn't believe he would trust a shinobi from another country so quickly. The blonde Konoha Nin said, yes. These last few months have made it clear that if I want you as my allies, I need to be able to protect you. The Akatsuki is too dangerous. With some hesitation, Samui took Naruto's 3 Hiraishin kunai and looked at them with interest. She raised her eyes again to meet Naruto's. Thank you, Naruto. The other blonde smiled and then became serious. He then put out his hand to Samui and said, don't forget to give them to Yugito and Kurabi and explain what they do. It's very important. Until we meet again, it might be a while. Samui grabbed his hand and shook it, but she wouldn't let go. It was nice to hang out with you, Naruto. Her eyes got very intense, and Naruto forgot that Omoi and Karui were standing behind her. Be careful. When Omoi saw what Naruto and Samui were saying, his eyes got bigger. He tapped Karui on the shoulder, but she looked just as shocked as he did. Ah, Naruto said, realizing that Samui's hand was now very warm in his. Me too, Samui. I liked being with you. He tilted his head at her and suddenly felt a little awkward. Oh, you be careful too. Don't hesitate to summon me with the kunai, okay? Naruto took a deep breath as Samui tightened her grip on his hand and drew closer, shocking Omoi and Karui. I won't, he said. But since they were close, she only looked into Naruto's eyes. It looked like she was going to say something, and Naruto looked the same way, but neither of them said anything. Then she quickly turned around and let go of his hand. I'll see you soon, Naruto said. Karui and Omoi fell to the ground, and Naruto got very red. Why yeah. He stood there and watched Samui walk away. It was easy to find Karui and Omoi because they were a mess on the floor. You guys take care of her, yeah? After that, he turned around and followed his other teammates. Omoi stuttered as he picked himself up from the ground. He was kinda cool. Karui did nothing but stare at Naruto's dissipating shape in the distance. She let out a sigh and let Omoi help her stand up. Samui's rubbing off on you. But yeah, he's a dependable guy. A lucky bastard is what he is. I watched as the last of the Konoha Nin left Kumo. Akatsuki has made an enemy out of us. He said he wanted you as an ally, right? Kurabi took things very seriously as he stood next to his brother and watched Naruto and his team leave. Akatsuki will pay for this. Brother, I will join forces with him. He seems to know what he's doing, and I think he is already stronger than I am. Kurabi was angry most of the time these last few weeks, even when he wasn't rhyming. His own village had been destroyed in that way. Things would never be the same again, even though it was being rebuilt. Before he did another rap show, it would be a while. Yes, I agreed, perhaps he is. And that's a dangerous thought. If the Akatsuki has single individuals capable of causing this, then we should crush them, as Naruto wants, as I want. As they looked down from Kumo's highest mountain, B thought about all the men and women working to rebuild Kumogakure all around him. Not all of Kumo got hit, but I told him, we owe him and her. We owe them too much. We will ally ourselves with Uzumaki Naruto. That is all he asked for in return. I will never betray him for saving most of the lives in Kumogakure. Tsunade-sama too? B asked. A bit grumbled. I guess so. That wrench hasn't changed at all. He couldn't believe the woman had the nerve to make him cancel all of her debts in the land of lightning. Still, it's not a big deal considering how many lives that Iwanukan and Deidara almost took. Yes, it more than tripled the reward for that jerk. An Akatsuki member in a mask told the person in front of him, killing him off is very good for business, Nagato. The member then gave the person a suitcase full of cash. When Kakuzu walked in, Pain's Diva Path was talking with Sasori. According to Diva Path, he still has some uses. Sasori also said, he's a strong member, just a bit too volatile. The oldest person in the room turned away and said, I'll make sure I'm the one who kills him when he's no longer useful. He'll be a fun kill, I think. When Diva Path went back to the conversation, it picked up where it left off. So, Uzumaki Naruto knows Hiraishin no Jutsu and advanced Fuinjutsu. His mother and father were Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Kushina. A little further away, Nagato paused for a moment as he thought of his own last name. He thought Konoha was lying when he first heard the Kyuubi Jinchuriki's full name. So, we truly are related then, Uzumaki Naruto. So you haven't spoken to Tsunade yet? He yelled at Jiraiya. Are you kidding? She was furious with me before I teleported her to Kumogakure. Last time I saw her was in the presence of the Raikage and even then she looked ready to rip my head off and feed it to that pig of hers. Tamari said as she walked behind the two and next to Tayuya, you kind of deserve it, Taiko, for what you did to her assistant. The redhead agreed, even I think that went too far, you jerk. Real torture is what it was. I know, I'll tell Shizune and Tsunade I'm sorry soon. Okay? Naruto let out a small puff of air in anger. As soon as Tsunade-sama doesn't look like she wants to massacre me. Might be long, kid. She still looks at me that way just for checking out her boobies 20 years ago. Jiraiya got a dull look from Naruto's team.
I will continue the story in next part. Till then, we weeb offline.